Well, hello. I had a number of people ask if I was free to come onto here because of, you know, there's a war. So I figured why not see if anybody has any important questions about it, anything I can do to reassure people, that the world isn't going to end, things like that. Oh, okay. Let's see. Let's see. Lindsay, how are you doing this evening? Fine. I just had a JBS about the podcast that we're building up, laying out some things, accountables, things for us to do in the coming week, because it takes a lot of work to start building things like this. And just before that, I was over on the adjacent mountain, so it's same chain of mountains, but I was one mountain over, going bowling, so that's always fun. But yeah, otherwise, I know a lot of people seemed really worried about what's going on, so I figured it'd be useful for me to pop in here and be able to answer any questions people have about it. And again, I think just be reassuring, I hope, because there's a tendency for people to get very apocalyptic about this sort of thing, like, oh, everything is in World War III. There's no World War III out of this. But it's I think it's important, at least, to talk about it more realistically. Let's see. So that's out of the way. Oh, hello. Yes, I know. Main character. Hello.
Hi, Liam.
Hello. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad you're on. So I'm glad you're saying you don't think it's apocalyptic. So do you see this as just a beating of chest, retaliation? Hey, we're here too, and this is how big and strong we are.
Yeah, it's interesting that they were willing to, because the Israelis have actually hurt the Iranians quite a few times, in the last dozen years or so, but they've never been willing to retaliate this physically. But it's definitely a kind of chest beating to maintain your credibility. The fact that, hey, you can't just do whatever you want to me, because plenty of countries in the world, if you drop stuff on them, they don't do. I mean, if the U.S. bombs Nicaragua is not going to attack the U.S. There's significant power differences. The Iranians are concerned at this point, because they're a growing regional power, to let people know you can't do whatever you want with zero consequences. But it's intended to be a kind of basic tit for tat brinkmanship, not an immediate full scale escalation, where the only risk we have is what the Israelis do next. Because if they take this, because the kind of attack that they did, I mean, drone aircraft and some missiles, they know the Israelis have really good missile defense systems, then they're really good at shooting down drones. So some things are going to touch ground, but not a huge amount of it. And it's a matter of whether or not that cabinet in Israel can tolerate some damage and start de-escalating, or whether or not they get angry enough to strike back. And then the big question for us is, what's the scale there? Because if they only do a small strike again, then it could be a little bit of tit for tat back and forth, but it doesn't turn into a major confrontation. If the Israelis launch a much bigger strike, then we could be kind of in trouble. But I still don't really expect that to happen.
You don't
So
think Israel's been waiting for this? I mean,
they
I
have
feel
been,
like
yeah.
they've been dreaming about this for ages.
They have, but it depends upon the type of conflict they want. A low intensity, drawn out, back and forth series of rocket strikes and drone attacks serves their interests just as well as a large conflict, and probably better because it has less actual risk to the country. Israel's still a relatively small country, and if they were to suffer a lot of damage, the fatalities there, I mean, it could be disastrous economically for them in tons of ways. No one really wants a major conflict, but they do want a war, and they have one now. I think that they've already accomplished what they want there. They can divert our attention to it. They can talk about it all the time. Iran, and shift the media narrative. There's going to be tons of chest thumping, and if that can carries the risk of continued back and forth smaller scale attacks, that again very much serves their interests.
Yeah, like them saying, "See, we told you we're vulnerable. We get attacked. This is what we've been talking about." I don't know if the global society will shift um, from what is actually happening. Will they see this as retaliation, or will they see it as, Israel has the right to defend itself?
Oh, it just depends on the person. It's the biases of the individuals. So obviously, tons of people who are already in the Israeli camp immediately are like, "How can you possibly say anything nice about Iran? How can you say this is self-defense?" They immediately want to ignore that Israel committed literal acts of war against Iran. Um, Everyone wants to pretend they didn't actually start the fight. I don't think it's really going to change much. I don't think it's going to change the international dynamics in a significant way. The big thing is how the media narrative will play out. And there will be a huge push in corporate media to get everyone talking about how Iran is the world's great, supporter of Teaism and blah, blah, blah. And look how dangerous this is. And the Israelis have not actually been hit with anything significant since 73. So it is a shift there that they can definitely use. But the fact that it's a limited strike and not intended to be a protracted conflict does give the potential to keep things from immediately shifting into overdrive. So it's a matter of like we're like with the situation in the Strip. There's a long-term game to this as well as the short term, and over the coming weeks or months of however long they milk this, because they will milk it. They will milk it in the press. They will milk it in government discussions, get everyone talking about it, because then we ignore the ethnic cleansing. It's trying to shift attention there. But they want to shift the attention without actually, because this is the danger of brinksmanship, without stepping too far over the edge such that there's really significant consequences for them. I think they want to kind of avoid that. And this is what the U.S. has been trying to do too. We've been begging them for years, please don't attack Iran, please, because Netanyahu was threatening it for a long. He was threatening it all through the Obama administration. But the U.S. has always restrained that because they know what it will cost to the region, the global economy. So there's going to be a lot of things trying to dig their hooks in and hold people back. Restrain it a little bit without actually stopping it. That's the nasty thing about realpolitik, because you'll have people trying to limit this because a limited conflict serves many of the actors' agendas. It actually helps the Iranians too. This plays well into their domestic politics. There's a lot of the major players will all benefit from a low intensity conflict, but no one is really benefiting from a large one. So they'll keep it up, but they're not really going to try and stop it entirely either. And that's the sad part. And that's where we come in and the media comes in, because if this stretches out as a long-term, lower intensity one, then it's, do we allow that to manipulate us? Do we allow that to destroy all the gains that we've made in terms of raising awareness about the Palestine issue and everything else? Do we let it all go to pot over this? Or do we keep the attention where it's supposed to be? That'll be the hard part, because they're going to use this intentionally. No one wants to end the the conflict, but again, they don't want it to spill over either. I don't know if that's making sense. I'm rambling a little bit, but
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I agree with you. You don't think that this is the same pattern of Israel, beating their chest and then going to the US and crying and hoping that the US will go and fight their wars for them?
well, yes and no. Both of the countries have actually used each other repeatedly in ways like that, and also tried to restrain each other. It just depends on the circumstances. We have a really weird relationship with them. Our government and theirs. The But they have that. I mean, a lot of those drones were being shot down almost immediately by the UK and the US.
Right.
They were there right away, and they weren't attacked. They weren't struck, but they took it upon themselves to enter the conflict and shoot those things down. That the Israelis want, and they've wanted that for a long time. Yeah, and the Jordanians. Interestingly enough, a handful of other states said you can't use our bases and whatnot. So yeah, Kuwait and whatnot. So it's not even within the ally camp. It's not universal, in terms of the support there. It really it's going to be fractious, and those tensions are actually going to build in the coming weeks over this. But yeah, Israel doesn't want the U.S. to launch a major war really either. But they don't mind it. They don't mind playing brinksmanship and trying to get really, really close to it. Because at the end of the day, what the Israelis want is to limit Iran's ability to become a major regional power. They don't want their economy to keep growing. They don't want their nuclear program to succeed. They don't want them to be a big player, because then they're not the sole hegemon in the area. I mean, Israel is the big fish in its pond. And if you can get the U.S. involved militarily to help restrain Iran, that's beneficial. But a major shooting war between Iran and the U.S. would mean that Iran would actually launch a lot of its ballistic arsenal at Israel, because it can hit it. And I don't think that any Israeli government wants to see Tel Aviv in flames. I mean, if they can overwhelm it, if you launch enough things, you can overwhelm the missile defenses that they have. Israel's missile defenses are quite good, but you can overwhelm if you launch enough, and nobody wants that. The Israelis still remember the Scuds that came during the Gulf crisis. When the Operation Desert Shield became Desert Storm,
During
and those
the Gulf War.
in, they launched
Yep.
Scuds at Israel because they could hit them. It was the only target that they could reach. Most of them were not terribly effective, but they were an effective terror weapon. There's a lot of buildings in Israel that have like steel doors that can clap shut, covering all the windows, and the buildings were built to be like gas proof, all kinds of stuff. There's a kind of paranoia about that. And I don't think anyone wants to really revisit that kind of shit and build that up either, because that could topple this government. And they know that. They have to play a dangerous game. If they can keep tensions high, they can stay in power, and these far-right assholes can keep doing what they want to the Palestinians. But if they push it too far, people will topple them because they don't want, those rockets coming to them. So they're walking a tightrope. You see,
Right.
once it gets complicated, because you have internal factors that are different in every single country involved, their own internal logic as well as the international relations aspects of it. There's so many moving parts when you're looking at international relations stuff, that I totally get why people can easily fall immediately into the apocalyptic scenarios. So it's useful at least to say, yeah, bad shit can happen here. We got to be aware of that, but there's a lot of reasons why people don't want it to go that way either, and we actually have some ability to affect that too.
So, Liam, let me ask you this: what do you think? What do you think about Lebanon at this point?
In what way?
After an attack like this, with Big H being in Lebanon, because I know they had started, or the rumor has it that they were the ones that started these missile attacks or drone attacks.
Yeah, no, they're involved. This is one thing that could spiral out, and I actually I mentioned this months ago when this conflict started, that there are people in the cabinet who are looking for an opportunity to retake that southern third of Lebanon. They want to go back up to the Litani River again, and H2 getting involved here can provide an excuse for that. And I think that they could probably get away with it if the media narrative shifts enough to Iran bad, Iran bad, Iran bad, and we stop talking about the Palestinians. So that where again, there's a place where we have some agency here, and we need to work hard to prevent that, because the media has for many, many years gone way out of its, especially in the U.S. and the U.K. and Germany. Those are the three worst offenders. But every time groups like H1, H2, or H3 are mentioned in the media, they always say Iran backed. They always remind you they're trying to build they're trying to vilify Iran and tie them to them like the puppet master, so that if they ever were to do something like this is why Israel's been baiting them. If you can get them to do something, see, they've always wanted to drive us into the sea, and then the world will the major powers will turn the other way while they roll back into Lebanon. That actually has been a goal for, especially for the religious Zionists, because again, they do consider that part of their historic territory, so they want it for whatever fucked up reason. That is definitely a realistic prospect here, and the Lebanese government is still pathetic enough that it's not like it could do anything about it.
Yeah, non-existent.
But really, the fact that if you have, so here's the way this works. If you have Iran there, and Iran is backing H2, and they're fighting across there, then there's a strategic rationale to pacify the region and stop H2, so you move in there, and because no one in Lebanon was able to stop H2 from doing what they're doing, no one's going to object in the same way to it, and basically they will blame Iran for Israel doing what Israel wanted to do.
Yeah, that's been the pattern. Okay. In your opinion, why did it take Iran this long to get involved? I mean, I know this is just beating of chest, and it's not too significant.
They've never wanted to. It's taken a lot of effort. The Israelis have been, can I say assassinated?
Especially if you say it like that, yes.
Yeah, they've been taking out scientists for a long time. They planted computer viruses to sabotage things. There's spies in there that they've been engaging in industrial espionage and sabotage of things. They've been involved in a low intensity conflict for some time, but the Iranians have generally not responded except through groups like H2.
Proxies.
One of the reasons that they try to keep that whole proxy narrative going is because Iran doesn't want it to be a direct conflict. They know the risks that are involved in that. So it's interesting that they were baited into it this time. This is actually the first time Iran has been involved in a physical confrontation with Israel. But they have
What broke the camel's back?
They've been using the rhetoric forever. You know, I mean, go back to like Ahmadinejad was always saying like, the Zionist entity, and we need to abolish it. You know, like, and people were like, oh, they want to nuke us, which they don't. I mean, the statements he was actually making are just the general policy position a lot of Muslim countries have. No recognition of Israel until the Palestine situation is resolved. But people played it in the media in the U.S. and Europe as Iran wants to nuke Israel. And that's actually been a big factor behind the drive to stop them from developing the weapons, which they want as a deterrent more than anything else. It's a really fucked up dynamic there. But they have actually used an incredible amount of restraint to avoid actually responding all this time. It's interesting that this finally pushed them over the edge.
What do you think broke the camel's back then? What was the point that?
I think the key there, and this would take a lot more time to dive into, but I think it has a lot more to do with internal politics in Iran than anything else. Like the Israeli regime and quite a few in the region, the government of Iran is actually quite fragile. A lot of people don't really like it. And the fact that they're constantly trying to stop reformers from taking the major positions, this is why it's kind of like the U.S. and like the Khomeinists are always like scratching each other's backs in a way, because if they do something provocative, and then the U.S. does something provocative, and then that helps them in the next election to put a hardliner in power, and it keeps them from having to reform. But that keeps the population getting more and more angry over the years. And since '09 especially, like every few years, there's a major series of protests. There's been 3 major sets of like really sustained protests in Iran since then. And they understand that their hold is fragile. The people won't tolerate it forever. The Iranian population is actually far more secular and far better educated than anywhere in the Arab world. It's funny that we always like think of them as this big bad Islamist power, but most Iranians would just prefer a normal secular democracy. They don't like theocracy. So the Khomeinis have a tenuous grip on power, and they have been stretching this out for a long time. But wars always help. This is another one of the things that is risky for us, because it also would help Biden. If we're in a shooting war, Biden wins. It solves his Trump problem. So that's one big danger for us. But let's come back to that later. The Iran situation, it's the domestic politics that matter more. They need to shore up their support, get people to rally around the government, stop demanding reforms, blah blah blah. And if you can point to the Zionist entity, then you're distracting people from it. That's always useful.
How much of it too is that, like, when it's just Israel like taking out Iranian scientists or whatever elsewhere in the world, like there's plausible deniability there. They can pretend like it's not Israel, but when it's Israel dropping on a building, on a consulate, like it's really hard to deny that that's that group of people doing that to you at that point. So at that point, you kind of have to take a stand and react to it, right? Just from even from an internal politics perspective, like, or else you just look like you're being pushed around.
Even where it's been extremely clear, and even places where they have admitted that they did things, and things like some of the computer attacks that hurt the nuclear program, they were like, yeah, we did that. They had no problem with that. But it's harder to sell that to your own public to respond militarily, especially since the nuclear program itself is actually quite controversial inside Iran. It has there's a very weird relationship within the government circles and in the wider public about the drive to it. So a physical strike is easier, but where it still wasn't certain that they would, the fact that it was still striking in a third-party country, because in that way it's a little bit like the assassination of Soleimani in Iraq. That was an act of war that Trump committed against Iran. And that could have led to him. But what that did was that led to something very much like this. They released a barrage of rockets that hit U.S. assets inside Iraq, did minimal damage, and then everyone just kind of calmed the fuck down. The hope, I think, for Iran is that this wouldn't go much beyond that kind of response. But yeah, it's because it's taking place in a third-party country, it still isn't a certainty that you can get broad popular support for a conflict. So I think they have to watch carefully about this. So again, how things play out over the next week is going to be very, very important inside Iran. Hi, what are you doing, little cat? I'm silly kids. Hi.
Yeah, I don't know. It's good to hear someone who's level-headed like you, who's like, take a breather. It's just gonna. I mean, there's so much we don't know, but it is. It's very disturbing, to say the least.
Good. I want it to be disturbing to people. I just don't want everyone to have like an immediate, anxiety attack and like the world is going to end and start digging a bomb shelter. Because there's, and this is something I'm constantly trying to warn people about this one too. There is no prospect of a World War III. People have been talking about this forever, and everyone's like, oh, but Russia, oh, but China, oh, North Korea, everyone wants to create it. There's no chance. Like there's nothing in the current political and economic structure that could give you a conflict of that scale at all. But regional wars, Those, yes. And a significant regional war in the Mideast is definitely possible. A regional war involving multiple powers in the Mideast is definitely possible. But it's not going to draw in major powers like China. It's not going to turn into like a massive conflict like that. And realistically, a lot of these powers too, it's in Iran's interests to beat its chest a little bit and show some of its capabilities, but they understand that a more significant conflict, it would set them back a lot. And that ultimately is what Israel and the U.S. want, and they know that. So the danger, and this is one of the reasons for, what was it, Jedi? Oh yeah, why it was kind of like not certain that they would respond this way, is that if they do something like this, they invite the possibility of Israelis or an Anglo-American coalition going in and hitting a bunch of major sites in Iran and doing significant economic damage. And they're the only way this government maintains power in the long run, the only way it survives, is if it continues to grow economically, if people's living standards keep going up, because they want to be a regional player, a regional power, but the people want a good living standard. They want things to keep improving. If a war comes along and it sets them back, then people are going to blame the government for that, and they are going to tear those fuckers out of power. And Khamenei knows that. They're well aware of the risks of something like this. So there's a lot of backroom de-escalation stuff going on. Right now, the Iranians are talking to the Americans and everybody else and like, yeah, please, let's like, okay, we got to do this shit. We all got to beat our chests. You guys know the drill. You know the realpolitik on this, but no one wants it. It's in American and Israeli interests that Iran is hit harder because they don't want Iran to grow into a major power. But it's not in Iranian interests. And it means that they are usually the ones that have to show the restraint and not provoke people. It's a fucked up situation to be in, you know? But in the entire Middle East area, the entire Middle East region, only Iran and Turkey fall into what you can call the semi-periphery in the global economy, where they have a significantly diversified economy. They can do basically anything that they need to do. They're not as rich, as the core countries are, but they don't have all the structural weaknesses of the peripheral ones. Saudi, for all of its wealth, is a peripheral state. It is much more fragile. Its economy is ultimately trash. It's got money coming in from one source. Iran doesn't have those kind of weaknesses. Iran could grow to be a significant world power. And everyone knows that. It's got the resources, it's got the population, it's got the education. It can become a major world power if it keeps going on its current trajectory. A major conflict knocks them down a peg, and they don't want that.
I think one of the big things that a lot of Americans in particular make the mistake of doing when they look at China or Russia or any of the other powers in the world is that they apply the U.S.'s capabilities to those other countries in a very critical way that most of those countries don't have a capability that we have, which is the ability to actually project our forces across oceans and continents.
Yeah.
China
This is why China and Russia are not a threat. They have no ability to do that at all.
Yeah, so they don't have the ability to support either by airlift or by sea lift an expeditionary force to fight a war in the Middle East the way we do. Now, China, my geography might be getting the best of me, but I do believe that Iran and China share a border. So,
wait, how?
Oh no. There's countries. No. Like I said, my geography might be failing me.
South Asia's in between them.
So yeah, like they don't even have that advantage.
Yeah,
so,
not even in terms of like naval routes. I was trying to think of like the sea lanes. No, there's nothing. brings them
There's
anywhere.
nothing there.
They're,
Yeah.
they're never in close proximity. And actually, people, I had somebody on one of my social accounts saying that like Pakistan will get involved and Pakistan can launch their missiles and their nukes and whatever. Like Pakistan does not have any missiles that could reach Israel, even if they wanted to do that, and they don't. But they physically can't do it. It's not possible. We tend to project our understanding of our capabilities onto other countries and assume that everyone can do all the same shit. But that's generally not the case. So there are significant technical limitations that have to be factored in, as well as all the internal politics and the geopolitical considerations. Even if China could get involved in a land war in the Mideast, they have no reason to do so. Like none. It does not serve their interest in any way, shape, or form. They like to feel that they're at the table, that they're represented, that people take them seriously. They want to use soft power. But military force actually doesn't serve any of their own long-term strategic interests, and it harms the stability of their own government. So, I mean, when people are often pointing to these other powers saying, oh, they'll get involved, they'll protect. No, they won't. This is why, again, there's no chance of a quote-unquote World War III. Oh, there's no...
Liam, well, first, it's really good to see you. I hope you had a good bowling with your new bowling shoes.
Yeah, it was fun. It's gonna take a while. It was hard. They not only do I have the growing damage in my knees that I have to somehow push back against, but it's going to take me a while to get used to both the new wrist guards and the new shoes, because they're not the way I used it. Everything's different.
That just means more time at the alley, which
exactly.
is good.
Right, yeah, exactly. And if I'm not, and it's not like it's very expensive, to go and do a few games every now and then. So I'm just gonna go. I'll get some practice in, and it'll be nice. It's a nice little relaxing thing that I can do, and
I love that. I think that the chat was saying, I think it was Bird who said, we needed Liam, and here you are. And I think that like when I don't know what to do, I garden and plant seeds or so I think that, my mind probably maybe similar to other people, I'm sure that I just catastrophize. So I'm definitely, and I think that you know this about me, where I definitely go to that like World War III piece. But I think that the piece that I get really concerned about is just that I think this is just going to be like even more retaliation towards Palestinians. And it's just, we already see just complete disregard before. I think that it's just going to make it they're not going to hold back at all. And then I guess the other piece, that the question that I have is, because of all of the moving pieces, just so many moving pieces, like with Jordan and how do you not see it escalating into the way that my mind immediately goes to, I guess?
Okay. So there's how not. Okay. So there's a few pieces I can put here. So one, in terms of the catastrophizing and the worries and whatnot, I had a few people ask on social media for me to come on, so which is why. Okay, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. The situation, as bad as it is, and as many things are involved in it, it doesn't. I could just go and like hang out and watch Red Dwarf right now. I'm not going to doom scroll on my phone. I'm not going to be like obsessively doing stuff. I have like 30 news apps. There's constant alerts on there, but I read really fast, so things come up every now and then. But I can still sit there and just totally relax. No big deal. It's not going to bug me on that. But I know it's going to bother other people. So I figured if there's anything I can do that can help out here. Because for me, I have like this giant puzzle matrix in my head of all these pieces that sit in different positions and have their own relationship to each other. And I can, when one thing happens in one place, I know how it affects the other pieces around it. And it just like the puzzle sort of like realigns a little bit. And then I can say, okay, then that, and every time it realigns, then there are certain directions it could go, certain paths that can happen. So that gets to your question about the how part, because this could turn into something quite bad. There are certain paths to it, but they're narrow. So what you can do is you can see, okay, if the parts line up all this way, and if this happens and this happens, then this could happen or this could happen. And some of those ifs are bad. Most of them are just more of the same bullshit. But a lot of things have to go wrong in a particular way for it to become really bad. A lot of people have to fuck up significantly for that to happen. So I think one of the things that makes it easier for me to be calm about it is that I have all these pieces moving around and realigning constantly. And I can, out of that, I can see it can go this way, and this way. And, you know, from there, you can always predict what is the more likely causes, you know? So that makes it kind of easy for me not to get too worked up about things. But it also, it's the same thing with tons of other issues. You know, I had so many difficult conversations with people around the 2016 election and telling people, yeah, no, Trump could absolutely win. You know, like this is a coin toss. You know, this is absolutely a coin toss. It just depends on a couple of states and what they do. You should care more. And I couldn't get people to pay attention to it. It's so hard. But the way that worked, the reason that was obvious to me and not to like all the assholes they put on CNN or in the New York Times or whatever saying, yeah, Hillary's got it in the bag, whatever. It's because I have all these pieces moving around and you can see what are the places where it can turn. And if this one place does this, if this happens in Michigan, oh, we're fucked. You know, like you have to have those turning points. And I know for this situation, the ones that could take us in that direction, there are so many things kind of in the way. There are so many aspects of it that it's difficult to get that far. This will be bad, but it's not where I think you guys would go with it, you know? It's not that kind of bad. Minime. Ah.
Yeah, I remember I've always kind of, my brain's always been that way. I remember when I was younger, it's like, I'm going to fail this test and then I'm going to die and, alone. Like it just immediately kind of catastrophizes in any situation. It's just, that's what my mind does.
Right. Yeah, I get it. I've always had friends that are like that. So I'm terrible with social stuff, so I don't know always the right thing to say or how to help. But if hearing me nerd out and share a few things calms people down, I'm perfectly happy to help out where I can, which is why I turned this on. That's it.
One other question, since you were kind of bringing up 2016, because I was definitely one of the people then that I was surprised when Trump won. And this time I'm not going to be. I've really been preparing and knowing that that's obviously a real reality. But with this current situation, yeah, I mean, obviously that's a really big puzzle piece coming up. So,
well, yeah, and ultimately it's one of the reasons that that we as Americans needed to be paying much more attention to this, and why I've been trying to get people to pay attention to the wider situation. Yeah, tons of stuff about Palestine directly, but Palestine within its geopolitical circumstances, this actually benefits Biden, and he knows that. He is struggling right now to hold on to his coalition. He needs people to turn out for him in order to prevent Trump. And wars always do that. You know, I mean, I had tons of people hitting me in the 04 election. Everyone's just like, oh, everyone hates W. W's been dumping arsenic in the water and all this awful shit. And oh, the war, everyone hates the war. This'll end everything. And all this like liberal bullshit. Like, I'm like, no, dude, wars get presidents reelected. There's just no way in fuck, you know? And so I mean, I was like the only person in my peer group that said yes, Bush is going to win this one, and he won it by millions of votes. Where he actually he came under. He won by the Electoral College the first time. He won it handily the second time because of that war. Wars do that to Americans. Americans are a uniquely violent people that way. It's very easy to draw out the jingoism in us, and it's true for Democrats as well as anything, as well as Republicans. So this will help hold that base together for him, and he knows that. So it's
Fascinating.
but again, I don't think they want it to get big. If it turns into a big thing like the Iraq War or some big thing that could turn against him, that doesn't help Biden. A long-term, low-intensity conflict, tensions, Iran bad, that helps Biden. But a huge war does not. And it's one of the places where it's a break. So it's a place where there's a risk because but it's also a place where it's one of many, many places where there's kind of like a little firewall that can help keep this from becoming something humongous, because they understand they have to walk a fine line. They have to be willing to do damage, unalive large numbers of people if they need to in missile strikes or whatever, but not actually turn it into a major conflict because it has domestic consequences. So go so far, it actually helps. Go a little bit farther, and it hurts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And that's really fascinating. And thank you. Thank you for coming on. Like the chat was saying, we needed you and here you are. So I think probably the best way, Soul, are you there? Maybe the best way is just to kind of go Soul, Rebellious Rainbow, and Spiritual, and just keep on, yeah, talking about what's going on here. And thank you for coming on, Liam. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, again, I mean, it seemed like people wanted some help there. And again, because there are so many parts to this, yeah, I'm happy to help where I can, Because again, where all the pieces fall, I'm not worried, if other people are, what can I do to help, and at least let people know, here are the real risks, here are the bad things that can happen. And in each of those, if we come up with something that sounds bad, okay, what can we do about it? That's something we can also talk about, because again, we do have a certain agency in these circumstances. Hi.
Yeah, I second that, Erica. Thank you so much for being on here, Liam.
There's so many ways in which when people get worried, one thing that often happens is that it makes people feel more helpless, and then they do even less. Like there's a risk there psychologically. If you feel too scared by something, then you can't act in a way that could actually help. So we need to make sure we don't let that catastrophizing get out of hand. Like, be aware of the risks, be very cognizant of what we're dealing with here, but not so much that it actually paralyzes you and stops you from helping,
Yeah, I'm done with my questions for now. Thank you, Liam. I'll go on mute, and the next person can go. Thank you.
Yeah, I saw a report that Palestinians are tearing down the apartheid wall in the West Bank.
Ooh, I didn't see that one yet. No, that's risky. Let's see. Where can I? Let's see what we've got here. No. What did I see here? Could be seen tearing. Could be seen tearing down. Okay, so where is this at? Come on, give us a spot. Where are they at? Somebody got some footage from Jackson Hinkle, of all people. What is this? Where are they at? It doesn't say where they're at. It's just a tiny little clip. It's a very small section. If this is all that's showing up, and it's the only thing that's coming up if I'm doing like a timed search on it, I can't find the location for it or anything about it. If you can see where this is happening, because the scale of it will matter. If it's a small piece they pulled down, it's not going to cause any significant problem. If large sections come down, and honestly, I'd love it if Palestinians did that and provoke things, but not in this circumstance. Normally, at a time when you're building a large nonviolent civil disobedience campaign, a major attack on the wall on multiple fronts would have been a great idea. If it happens during this context, it's going to bring out some really horrific shit among the settler militias. So I want to make sure that doesn't become anything big. If it's just a small piece I saw in this little video that Mideast Eye has up, if that's it, don't worry about it at all. It's not going to turn into a big thing. A larger section could provoke a really, really violent response right now because all eyes are diverted to Iran. They've already been pummeling Gaza. They would do some really fucked up shit. So yeah, I hope it's just that piece. This is not the time for that. It's so hard to plan things. There's a real strategic sensibility you need to know when and how certain tactics are useful. But anyway, okay. So, yeah, good. Thanks for bringing that up. I can keep an eye on that now and see if it's showing up anywhere else. But I've got nothing else coming up time-wise on it other than that one piece.
That's all I have for now. Next person.
Another follow up, or if you're okay, since you went before, we can go ahead and go to spiritual check and circle back, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't really have anything at the moment, anyways.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Go ahead, spiritual.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, where do we begin? It's like I was just earlier posting about all this stuff that I knew this was going to happen, and it's like they're just waiting for this to happen, and then boom, it happened, and it's like we're here now. Great, like I don't know what's going to happen now, and like everybody else, my mind started to worry, and unfortunately, not unfortunately, I meant to say fortunately, I didn't worry too much because like Dr. Liam said, it's going to be more regional than anything, but there's a possibility the U.S. could pull in, but who knows if that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about the ecological stuff that's been being reported on lately. So like all the oceanic problems with AMOC and what else? The UN, I think, was UN chief basically was like talking about we only have like 2 years left to really change the way we do things with our economic systems. And if we don't do anything like drastic enough in the next 2 years, it's going to be really bad for all of the ocean's ecological systems and just everything else. So
bad for us. And honestly, that's one place where, again, don't catastrophize in a way that's going to paralyze you, but you probably should be used to the idea that all of those worst case scenarios they've been talking about have already been inevitable. I mean, where they've been talking about we got to like keep it below 2 degrees Celsius, blah, blah, blah. We're past that shit. I mean, there will be ripple effects over the next century, and a lot of people are going to be displaced. This is one thing that honestly really is going to fuck the Mideast region too. There's significant portions of Africa, the Mideast, Central America, even portions of the continental U.S. like the Southeast that on current models will become uninhabitable by the end of the century. So there's no realistic way to prevent that stuff, but it does mean we really have to change stuff at a systemic level in ways that we needed to have done decades ago to prevent this. Because if we don't, and it continues, because if you stop right now, if all carbon emissions stopped right now, the planet would keep heating for the next 100 years. because that's how it's systemic. And the problem is humans don't think that way very easily. I'll give you a very simple analogy. Look at the way voters understand the economy. Somebody does something policy-wise. It takes 5 or 6 years for it actually to ripple out through on a systemic level and affect things, and then they blame the next people in office and say, you caused this. But that's not how this shit works. Our brains don't work well on that kind of large-scale systemic level. This is one of the places where I am, folks, you guys have to know, I am terrible at a whole lot of normal human activities. But thinking systemically is very easy for me. Thinking like, I don't know, about a lot of just super basic shit is not. But where most people are not really good at that, and it makes it very hard to have the right kind of conversations and think long term. What do we need to do? What do we need to do? If we do not change the systems still now, it's not going to prevent the damage. Massive damage is inevitable, but if we don't change course, we could make much of this planet uninhabitable. We could severely reduce the human population and biodiversity. We could set this planet back by billions of years. Force whole new species to evolve to fill new niches, because there are so many that are going to die off in this Anthropocene, extinction event. This could get really, really bad. We still need the massive, large-scale systemic change, and that means major mobilization. But at the same time, keep in mind, the reason you're doing it is that the major changes are already inevitable, and you're trying to prevent them from, I don't know, unaliving all of us. Like how do we stop that? But we will have to adapt. We're going to have to adapt to massive changes in the coming decades. I feel really bad for a lot of people in the world that we've been ignoring, neglecting, not paying attention to them, because some of this stuff's just really going to creep up, and all of a sudden, boom, like the whole country is fucked. You can't live there anymore. I'm with you there. I think about those a lot too. It's difficult because with those, you really need to look again. You need to be able to look over the longue durée. You have to take these models and look at the projections, and then take the projections, because the scientists do one thing, economists do another, policymakers do another. There's all these different pieces that go in there. If you can look and see how do the scientific models work, and then look at what are the economic trends and the policy trends, you can see whether certain things are more likely to happen than not. And right now, the thing you guys should be worried a lot more about is the environment, not the Mideast. Honestly, I mean, the conflicts, as horrifying as they are, the death tolls that we're seeing in the Gaza Strip right now are going to pale in comparison to the conflicts that will break out in the next 60 years. I mean, not like soon, but in half a century from now, like as this builds up, when so many places there's no fresh water available, the land it's no longer arable soil. You're screwed. So they're going to fight each other. They're going to attack other countries. They're going to start moving. You'll have massive migrations of populations. Tons of bad stuff can happen from that. We need to pay much more attention to that, because that's going to hit us in terms of millions of casualties where these conflicts are not. I'm not saying don't care, because obviously we all care about some of these issues, but I'm saying you're kind of right that is a bigger problem for us.
Oh, and we have the solutions. There's definitely I could tell you multiple solutions to what we can do right now, and it's just they're deer in headlights, deer in headlights.
Yeah, but we're not doing it. Fucking Biden opened up Anwar for drilling because they care about the economic stuff. So that's where, again, the climatologists aren't looking at the economy, and the economists don't understand the climatology. If you look at the consensus in both of their fields, what do those experts say, and you put them together, holy shit, we're fucked. Because people are still out making a buck, when if you paid attention to this, you'd know it's going to unalive all of us. Why are you doing it? Humans aren't really good at long-term thinking, though. This is what, at the end of the day, we're semi-bald apes. We literally are a species of great ape. I hate when people are always saying we evolved from apes, we evolved from monkeys. We are literally apes, and we're not that different from them, and we are not really good at long-term thinking. we have potential for certain types of reason if we work collaboratively and use certain methods that can weed out our biases. But our own natural way of thinking veers toward magical thinking and like coming up with, weird fantastical shit like, but it doesn't, those fictions don't keep us alive in this kind of situation. Like the things that we evolved to be good at 1,000,000 years ago in the savannas of East Africa, those skills are not useful when you're dealing with planetary-wide climate changes. We have to do that collaborating. We have to work a lot harder at it, but it's very hard to get people to wrap their heads around it and care because it's too complex. I worry about that one a lot more, largely because it's so hard to get people to understand why they should care and what they can do about it.
Yeah, at this point, I think the only way to handle it, like you said, was adapt. So like we're gonna need to do like when it starts, the more worse things start happening. We're gonna have to like really respond with like you said, mobilization and like some forms of protection. Like there's gonna have to be something that we're gonna have to build.
Well, yeah,
that's gonna help protect like insane
all
amounts of people.
Tons of new infrastructural things. The Dutch for years have been building a massive system to actually keep the sea out because a lot of their country is below sea level or just barely at sea level. If the sea level rises, the country's fucked. So they're building systems all along that can stop the water from getting in. There's a lot of things that have to be done in a lot of places that you can do, but some of these things they take a long time to do. And in terms of like large scale environmental adaptations or population movements from certain areas, the logistics of it are insane. And we're not even starting the process. And the trick here is if we let this go too far, humans are pretty good at like adapting quickly and doing things when we need to. But if we're only then doing that and all of our attention is focused on how do we adapt to the changes that we need right now to survive while people are unaliving in large numbers or whatever, we're still not dealing with the systemic stuff that caused it, which is why we should have done that first. Like that's what we should have been focused on, changing the systems that are causing this. And then let's do the adaptation stuff. But we can't even have those conversations because everyone just out there like, oh yeah, corporate capitalism is the best system ever. Don't change anything. What the fuck? If you can't get people to understand what is causing it's like one of the things that comes up in a lot of these discussions for us, where I keep telling people, if you want to understand why G-sides keep happening and T-ism keeps happening and all the rest of this shit and racism and apartheid and everything, we have to deal with the concept of nationalism. We have to deal with a 200-year-old fuck up that we need to undo. And no one wants to talk about that. Every country deals with a specific problem. You shouldn't have done that. That was bad. Don't do that one thing. But you never talk about what caused it, which means it happens over and over and over again. That ability to do the systems level thinking, to find the core causes, that's what we're bad at. And the global warming is the same thing. There is something driving us toward it. But we can't deal with that because everyone loves it and they think it's beautiful and they think, oh yes, profit motive is necessary. Without the profit motive, we'll all just be lazy bums, sitting around watching TV. Like what? If we can't break out of that paradigm, I don't see, how we get out of this, because the adaptation alone isn't enough. We can throw all the innovation we want at it. If we're not dealing with the causes of it, we're just going to keep making it worse. That's the part that frustrates me.
I definitely agree with you on that. I think there's got to be like a miracle in order for that to happen, though.
I don't want to hope for miracles. I want to hope for people. But again, if we get better at communicating, sharing ideas, using different people's strengths more effectively, it's possible. Humans have been astonishingly adaptable over time and have used things that evolve for very specific purposes. We've managed to put them to use in completely unexpected ways, and I know that it's possible to get us in the right direction here, but it's hard to do. There's a lot to it. So I know there's a way to do it. It just, how do you motivate people to really take on these kind of challenges and deal with the core issues there? It's a tough nut to crack. But again, it's another one. Please don't despair of humans in general. We definitely can do this. Don't think, oh, we're gonna extinct ourselves. Like, please don't be nihilists. Nihilists are a huge part of the problem. They don't make anything better. We have to find a way to be hopeful so we work together productively to change things, but not so hopeful that we're like all Pollyannas and like, oh, everything's great. Sunshine and rainbows are shooting out my asshole and everything's great.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I sometimes find myself slipping into nihilism a little bit every now and then, but I definitely agree with you. Still working on the idea I brought up to you before, trying to figure out how to convince people and start the protection thing that I was talking about. So I'll keep you guys updated with that once I figure out any more insights.
And yeah, honestly, any kind of like projects, discussions, things like that, that'll be a great thing for when the Discord community is really going too. That's another one too. I was just talking with JBS on this. What we need to do is corral the people that are most interested and willing to be mods for it, get them all together in a chat on it, and hash out the rules so I can pin the rules in one place, and then we can make it public. But we have to know enough people are watching it so I don't have like Chinese 12-year-olds posting dick pics in it. But it could be a great place to discuss all kinds of cool things that we want to talk about and bounce ideas around each other and everything else. So,
absolutely, I definitely want to join in with that. I sent you a DM actually asking if I could help with the moderation. So,
okay, cool. Yeah, anyway. I'll look through and catch up with some of those later. I mean, I tend to fall behind every now and then with like the messages, and I have to go back and scroll back through and find ones I missed.
So we just added 2, Liam. So my wife agreed to be a mod as well.
Cool.
So we need 3 more mods. Those of you that are interested, please let us know for the discourse. Liam and I met together, as he said, and we talked about launching the Discord, the podcast on May 17th. So please let us know so we can add you to the Discord. And then I'll put a call together so we can talk about logistics, administration, and so forth.
Yeah, and if people are interested too, we need at least 10 to 12 to start with, to then work together and construct the rules and be there watching as the community is launching. But if the numbers start growing in it, we need more people who are willing to jump in, and the mod pool can grow as the population grows. So we still want to know, everybody who's interested, please get in. But we need at least like our first 10 to 12 people to work out the rules and then have enough eyes on it throughout the day as it's getting launched. Christos. I just saw here. Oh, I never did a follow back. Oh, wait, it didn't. Oh, okay. It didn't let me. I just tried to follow back so I can get a DM. Okay, so Christos, send me a message, something like that. We can, get in touch. Because I see you all the time. Anyway, where are we now? I don't know who's steering this right now.
Stroop. Stroop, is that right?
Sure. Hi. So the last question actually really got me thinking about like more bigger systems, but I really had gotten up here originally to ask just your thoughts about more today's problem. Just I think I saw your video you posted a few hours ago about your kind of thoughts earlier today about what was going on with Iran and missiles, and I just was wondering, so 2 questions, and I apologize if you answered them before I got on the live. Just number 1 being kind of, where do you see things playing out from here in terms of, will Israel be launching a counter-strike that you see happening, or are they going to risk something like that? How can they save face if they don't? How does this how do you see it logically playing out? And number 2, how do you see, is this a big change that Iran is directly striking Israel from their own land? As far as I think I was reading that they have not done that before. I think they've used other bands of people, but I don't know if this was directly if they've directly attacked before. So just your insights on those questions or anything, that'd be great.
Yeah, Iran actually doesn't have a modern history of attacking anybody. That's I mean, all the wars that have taken place in you can go back to the 18th century and find Iran involved in a war, but Iran has managed to stay out of wars like completely for a long, long time. They've been attacked. I mean, the Soviets invaded, the Brits invaded. I mean, there's all kinds of crap like that. I mean, they've dealt with tons of the Iraqis invaded, but I mean, them actually launching an attack on somebody else, that is new, and it does reflect some of the growing confidence of a society that has been growing. Again, better educated, wealthier, more diversified economy. It wants to be a big player. And when you want to be a big player and become a world power at some point, given our current political system, which is again a good reason to change our political system too, folks, at some point, if you're growing as a regional power, you do have to, excuse my, I'm kind of a crass person at times. You have to pull your dick out at some point, yeah, and wave it around. You got to like show your power. You have to like, and beat your chest a bit. And this is an opportunity for them to do that, but to try and do it in a way that they still know a lot of players in the area, like the U.S. and whatnot, have an interest in trying to keep this from turning into something really huge. So they're trying to take advantage of that and actually take a step up in terms of their demonstrated capabilities, but not push it too far because they really don't have the capacity yet. They there's a handful of places where technologically they've gotten much better, but they really don't have the capacity for a significant conflict, and they do know that. So in terms of all the if then type stuff, like oh gosh, my eye hit something a second ago and I missed it. Oh well. There's so much going on, and I sometimes just catch. Where it can go, I really struggle with this one because I can kind of feel the pieces as they realign, but it's very hard to translate it into. It's hard to point out, especially since so many that depend upon a whole lot of like if-thens. So if this happens, then this, and this happen. And if those things happen, and it's all these moving parts. A lot hinges on some of the internal politics inside Israel, and there's reason for both worry and optimism. Okay. The current cabinet wants to stay in power. For that cabinet to stay in power, they need the threat level. And they need to divert attention from what's happening in the Strip to something like Iran and get their own public fixated on that. And then you get the whole like, it's wartime, we're all going to rally around the government. Get some of that. But if it's a big conflict, the Israeli public doesn't want it. And it would risk toppling them. And if this government falls, they had 4 elections in 5 years just to get to this one. Israeli society is so polarized at this point, so fragmented, that it will be very difficult to pull back together. So they are struggling to find a way to hold together the government they have, which does involve doing some fucked up stuff, but they have to make sure it doesn't go over a certain line, because if it does, not only do you have the physical risks of, a ballistic missile hitting Tel Aviv, but you have the political risks. And honestly, at the end of the day, politicians are assholes, folks. They care about being reelected. They care about being in power. They have that selfish interest. These guys don't want to lose their positions. To keep their positions, they have to walk a tightrope. So there will be they won't do nothing. There will be more retaliation in the coming days, but it's not going to be like dropping those Moabs on like the nuclear sites. It's not going to become like this massive conflict, because if they go after really big stuff like that, Iran's going to launch everything it's got, so it's, you got to be careful, but they're going to hit something, and it's a real question as to what. And I think the biggest factor there too in the area that's important here is, and one of the reasons the US and UK were so quick to to start knocking down drones themselves. No one had to ask them. They're like, hey, I'll help knock these out for you. They want to show Israel, we've got your back, bro. Don't worry about it. We'll keep things calm. Please don't attack Iran. Please don't make a big deal. Because if a large attack comes, that sucks us into a bigger conflict that Biden doesn't want. Biden wants, again, a low intensity conflict because that helps him win an election. A big one helps him lose it.
Yeah.
So they're also walking a tightrope. And the U.S. right now is going to be like, there's a bazillion phones ringing all over the place in D.C. and Jerusalem, trying to get people to calm the fuck down and find a different way forward. And all those pieces and all these different ministries, all that stuff has to come together and give us the right answer. And right now it can go in several ways because of the internal dynamics of this government and some of the people involved. They may miscalculate. There are some really horrifying ideologues in this government that honestly don't care. And this is honestly one of the problems, especially, it's true to some degree across party lines, but this is a much bigger problem with the Republicans than the Democrats in the US, that adherence to apocalypticism. If you have people in positions of power that want a nuclear war so Jesus comes back, then they don't care if a nuclear war happens. They're fine with that. They think the world has an expiration date already set. And there are people in Israel who have that. It's not for the same reasons, but there are strains in religious Zionism that also want a conflict of that level. And they would not mind if a whole lot of their population was unalived in the process, because it accomplishes a long-term objective of turning Israel into a halakhic state and rebuilding the temple. So it can get them what they want ideologically. They are still a minority, but they do have more power in this cabinet than they've ever had before. And that introduces a danger of a fuck up along the way. I'm not
like
saying
the
it's
Ben
not enough to
Gvir
deliberate
or
choice. The government isn't insane enough to deliberately choose apocalypse, but because some of the people have those biases, there could be miscalculations that could tip us off the tightrope, if that makes sense.
that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate your analysis. I was thinking about using the Ben Gvir types getting off on this stuff.
Yeah, no, he's getting off on this right now.
So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, but fortunately, again, there are certain checks on them still. Their ideology does not have absolute power, because they actually understand that most Israelis hate them.
Yeah.
Most Israelis do not agree with him. They have power because of a really fucked up parliamentary system that lets parties in with a very low threshold and causes really complex coalitions. But most Israeli Jews are less religious than American Jews by far. Most of them do not agree with the kind of wacko, settler religious Zionist bullshit. So they don't want that. And they all kind of know this. So other forces in government are always grabbing these guys by the hair and pulling them back a little bit. But because they want it, even if it's unconscious, because they have those prejudices, they could do something that tips the scales in a way. So we do have to be very cautious about this. But that's actually a lot harder to help people see again too, some of the internal calculations and where they could go wrong. But there are scenarios where this does become bigger. But right now, there's a lot of firewalls along the way. And I think the thing most people need right now is to know that there are a lot of firewalls in different places to stop it from spilling over. But there are risks and there are cracks in some of those walls, right? And so if you guys want on incoming weeks and whatnot, we can find time we can talk about where some of those cracks are, where do we need to put the duct tape. But right now, just know that there's a lot of people trying to keep this from going too far overboard.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Liam, two things. One someone asked what sort of defense system the U.S. has, since they don't have Iron Dome. If you know, if not, I have the answer. The second,
what sort of defense? What kind of defense system? What do you mean?
They don't have the Iron Dome, so what do they have in place?
Oh, God, we've been building shit like that since the 1980s.
We had
747s with lasers in them. We've experimented with so many crazy things along the way. We have our own versions of that, and we've actually been exporting things. One of the things that pissed the Russians off more recently is we actually put some of that stuff in Poland, to knock down missiles. So we can knock down much larger missiles than the Israelis can. The Israelis have focused on the small stuff. They're trying to knock out the Qassams that the PIJ used to launch at them. That's what they focused on. We can take out much bigger shit.
Yeah, we have the Aegis defense system and the mid-course based defense system. So for those of you that want to know, second thing, just advertisement. Click that yellow heart. There's 147 folks in here. Join his team. Like, share the live. We get a ton of value from meeting with Liam. Now there's 150. If everyone just clicked that yellow heart, we have 150 people joining. If you've already joined, great. The last thing is I'll say is, look, you're gonna be involved in a lot of conversations over the next few days that are going to make you nervous, anxious. Try easier said than done. Just temper it. You know, you're getting information from here. Don't let people rile you up. It is a difficult time for a lot of people, and everybody's anxious right now. So you're going to get very extreme conversations where we're going to the worst case scenario, and you're going to get people in the middle, and you're going to get people to the opposite spectrum. So just make sure you temper your reactions, you know, take care of yourselves. And ultimately what will happen, hopefully this will subside, and keep coming in for information because like I said, Liam is, you know, best at providing good perspective on a lot of things.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, thanks for saying the whole like tapping thing. I just can't do it.
I got you, man. I got you. So look, also don't forget to click on the host, let a pop-up come up and share the live. We're at 122. I'm going to flip it over to Liam to continue the conversation. Let's get him to 200 shares and let's get him to at least 40,000 likes. I'd really appreciate you all staying engaged. You listen, you can also tap with your finger. And there you go. All right, Liam, back to you, sir.
Okay, I think Erica's playing boss right now, so what's up, boss lady?
You're live, Liam. You're so funny. Water sign. Welcome to the panel. I don't know that we've met you before. How are you? And yeah, what's your question?
Hi. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I had a question for Liam. When you were talking about that good part of the population, at least my understanding is what you were saying is the good part of the Israeli population is not behind the government.
Mm-hmm.
From my understanding, I thought a good part of the Israeli population was pretty far right. Am I wrong, or are they?
It depends on how you want to do it. Technically, no. Most of the population is actually fairly liberal in most social areas. A lot of people really do want, in the factions that really would want some kind of real deal with the Palestinians of some sort is actually quite large. During conflict times, more people are like, yeah, hit them. But that's something that comes out in every country. This is why, like, again, a conflict tends to help people get reelected because it brings out that sort of jingoism whenever there's any kind of attack. So a lot of people are going to look a lot more super Zio right now in Israel than they actually kind of are normally. What makes the Israeli state much more far right is the coalition structure and the occupation, all the settler parties, the religious Zionist parties, and the fact that it's a very low threshold of votes to get a seat in the Knesset. If you only have 120 seats, and all you need is like this tiny share of the vote to get one of those seats, it's so much harder for somebody to get to 61. So you end up putting a lot of really fucked up people in your government, and over time they erode your rights, they push the country farther and farther right. It's ultimately their parliamentary system that makes the country seem more far right. The public isn't as awful, and it's one of the things I've been telling people for months on these things too. If you really want a long-term solution to this, if you want peace for Palestinians, justice for Palestinians, find a way to reach out to diaspora Jews and Israeli Jews. Like, talk to ordinary people in times when things are calmed down. So when all this is calmed back down, don't stop talking about Palestine. Get involved and reach out to people. When they're in that good mental spot, you can actually sway tons of them. Because a lot of them, they're broadly secular and they're broadly liberal, just like most American Jews are.
Oh, okay.
But the structural. I keep trying to point out to people, it's the structural features of an apartheid occupation and their parliamentary system that makes this thing so fucked up, that makes it so evil. It's driven by the circumstances, not by the people themselves. Which means there is a way we can get around that, but you have to know the times and ways to get to people.
We talked about that when we were reading After Zionism. I think it was Halper's essay that talked about the NGOs that were on the ground facilitating these conversations. I think AATW was one of them. And it was from that essay from Halper. I think it was John Halper that wrote the essay in After Zionism. So spot on there. And I love that you brought that up again.
Yeah, there are so many groups involved, but even beyond the people who are willing to get involved in a group like that, tons of ordinary people, if you just have conversations, they're human beings like everybody else. It's not like everyone's walking around with an SS hat on, you know? I mean, they can be reached. The radical factions in any society, fuck them. Don't talk to them at all. But the majority of people, when situations are calmer, you can have productive conversations and change minds.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that, because I was just confused that I heard that it was, I forgot what the name of the woman is, that she's pretty amazing speaker. Forgot her name, Abby something. And she was saying,
Abby Martin.
yeah, she was saying that 98% of the population is in support of how much, the bombing and everything that's happening over in Gaza right now.
It's not that high, but it is very high. But again, any kind of attack will do that. Look at okay, so a group of people that we'll call Al-Q did something in New York, right? And that got us to invade two different sovereign countries, neither of whom did it. Our government did terrible things all along the way, like, you guys know that the Taliban actually offered to surrender before the first bomb? They said, we'll totally step down. Please don't unalive our population. We will totally step down. And we said, nah, we would much rather bomb you. And we ended up there for 20 years. But the American public wasn't able to have those conversations. They weren't able to hear the reports. We couldn't talk about it. And same with the Iraq War. I mean, some of my colleagues, actually, one of my friends and one of my advisors was in one of the panels that went to DC and told them, if you go into Iraq, it will do X, Y, and Z. It will do all these fucked up things. We know what will happen here. It's dead obvious to people who study it. Don't do this. And they did it anyway because they wanted to. But those conversations, the information from the people who knew what was wrong about these ideas could not be heard because Americans in massive numbers, they wanted blood. And it didn't matter that it was innocent Afghan and innocent Iraqi blood for the Saudis and a handful of other people who did that act, Teaism is a criminal act, and it should be approached as crimes. You find the people responsible, you prosecute them, and the other part of it is it's a political issue. You solve the problems that motivated people to do it. So there's a political aspect and a criminal aspect. It should never involve wars. But the public is easily riled up to want blood. You can see this in societies everywhere. Look at somebody just talked in one of my other social media things. Somebody brought Thatcher recently in the Falklands / Malvinas in '82. You know why she did that specifically, and it went like so over the top? It's because her poll numbers were terrible. Her first 3 years in office, she fucked the economy so badly that it was going to collapse. But that conflict kept the Tories in power another 8 years. So if you can manipulate that and ride that, governments love doing it. But it brings out the worst in a public. Any kind of attack, and people want blood. Israelis are human like anybody else. So if you can see this in the UK, you can see this in the US, please understand Israelis are not uniquely evil. They're just people. And that attack, and the way they hear it in the media, the way they see it on television, the way they hear it from their neighbors, it plays with human psychology in a way that brings out the worst in us.
Liam, to that end, so the question Waterside brought up was 98%, according to Abby Martin, are right wing. But could you differentiate? Can you say that 98% are in agreement with their government's actions, but they're not in agreement with the right wing government? That's a different statistic. Can you?
Less than 20% of Israelis like this government. Less than 20%. They are the only reason they're there is because it was impossible to build a functioning government any other way. Most people hate it.
Great clarification.
What most Israelis want, and it's not even like they all support what's happening. It's sure as hell not anything close to that number in terms of like all the stuff that was happening they're fine with. But the vast majority of Israelis wanted blood. That's true. But that happens everywhere in every country that's ever hit. It's a psychological truism in modern states. It's very easy to manipulate people to that. If there is some kind of bloody event, it's very easy to manipulate people into that. But it's not like that's the norm. Next year, you can't find 98% of people saying, you know what? For no particular reason, we should absolutely go and do this thing. It's not that they want to do that all the time. They want to do it right now. They're circumstantial. It's like it came up earlier, like how did Bush get reelected in 2004? Things like that. Those conflicts bring out the worst in societies, and it's sometimes hard for people to understand or appreciate how easily we're manipulated into that. What are you doing? Oh, loud purse. Okay, so what are we up to? Was that it was water sign, right? We were just 1 minute ago. Was there any other part of this that we missed?
I think Acorn's up next if Waterside doesn't have any questions.
I have one last thing, but maybe you want to do it. I don't know if you've read it. I just noticed that a half hour ago, Biden put out a public statement about Iran, and I was curious if you read that or if you dissected that.
Haven't seen it yet. I went bowling, and then I met with JBS, and then I turned this on.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm a few hours behind on stuff. I can probably guess the kinds of stuff that's in there because I know the boilerplate that would come up about this, but I don't know what they said, so I couldn't make any specific comment on it.
Okay.
I know the kinds of issues that always come up around this. I mean, we've been trying to demonize Iran steadily since '78. I mean, and there are very specific ways that we do that. Hi.
Acorn, did you want to ask a question? I know you asked to come up.
Yeah, can I talk about a project?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be on too late, so we don't want to get too far into a whole bunch of like other subsidiary issues. But if there's something that's coming up, like something that's new, is that the picture here? You want to like
Yeah.
show something?
Yeah.
I can enlarge that. And you can make an announcement, kind of thing. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. I've been
You're fine.
helping Dr. May Hussein. She is the mother of Mansour Schumann, and this is her initiative. It's a global call to action to bring them home. Palestinian Hostages Week, which is next week, Monday the 15th to Sunday the 21st. And there's over 8,300 Palestinians from the West Bank in occupation, detention, or captivity. We don't know, nobody knows the exact number of the people from Gaza that are held by the occupation because they won't let anybody in to see, not even lawyers, not even human rights advocates. And so she mentioned this a few weeks ago on her live, and I invited her to a virtual protest I was planning. And she said, well, what am I going to talk about? I don't know what to talk about. And I said, talk about the picture project that you mentioned the other day. And when she talked about it, a lot of people showed interest in it. And so I've been helping her ever since. When I was researching it, looking into it, there is the 17th of April has historically been Palestinian Prisoners Day. And she feels like a day is not enough, that it should be a whole week. And that was ever since the 1974s when the Palestinian Council passed that. Yeah, people can't read the comments.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch it back and forth when because you're doing a lot of background. When you want to talk about a date or something, I'll put it back up.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just glad that 137 people saw it. So we are working with someone from the Palestinian prisoners. It used to be called a club, but now it's called society. Used to be called club, but it's society now. Who's helping us with pictures and profiles. And so what we're doing is we're hoping people will organize in-person events and print off the pictures and bring them with them to protests. But if that's like too short of a notice, we're doing an online thing also. There's two parts to the online thing that we're doing. The first part is people who sign up to help us, we're going to assign them a hostage so that they can do a little video about the hostage, share their photo, tell their story. And the second part of it is a coordinated TikTok duet train. So we're going to have a duet of a duet of a duet of a duet of a duet. And hopefully at the end of the train, the entire screen is filled with these pictures. So you can sign up in the link in my bio. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else about this project. Oh, and we're going to go live. Can't really say the date or the time because we're all around the world. So it's a different day and a different time for everyone. But if you go to Dr. May Hussein's profile, there's a TikTok live and you can click on it and it will tell you the day and the time wherever you're located. And trying to think of, and Al Jazeera English is interested in this story, so they might end up covering it. They're also working on a documentary thing, so it might be included in that. And just to like put this in context for anybody who doesn't know, and I'm assuming most people know, October 7th happened because the H group wanted to free these hostages. And instead of Israel just freeing these hostages, Israel did what we've seen them do. So if you support Palestine, if you support the resistance, this is a really important issue to understand and and show your support for. So thank you for letting me say all that. I appreciate it.
No, yeah, my pleasure. Always have to let people share announcements and move stuff around. You know, it's good to get the news out. It's another thing that I'm hoping if a larger Discord community grows around these kind of projects too, then it's also a place where people can post announcements. I'll have a section where people can share like new projects and things like that. So no, I'm perfectly happy to do that. And yeah, it was actually quite a few years between the last real attack by H1 and there was a specific objective. It's unfortunate that they still don't really seem to they struggle to predict what the Israelis will do. That's why tactically they make major mistakes here. Their approach is not helpful, but we know why and what they're attempting to accomplish, and from their perspective it does make sense. It's not going to get what they want, which it's sad, but what are we going to do?
Yeah, last week you and I talked about Erica Chenoweth's research on revolutions on the world. So yeah,
Right.
We would all benefit from looking into that research and using that research in our own efforts. There's three things that she says to analyze your tactics on. Does it bring sympathy from at home or abroad? Does it diversify the base of support? And does it provoke defections? If it's not doing one of those three things, it's not helping you towards your goal of anti-occupation.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there's so many drawbacks to certain tactics too that have to be taken into account that can actually stymie your ability to proceed on any of those lines. So actually, yeah, if we get the other little thing I want to do get started during the summer, the whole like radical reading room thing, the book club we were talking about. There's a big section on actually nonviolent civil resistance movements and revolutionaries. I mean, there's a shelf on like revolutionary theory, and there's a significant section on the different civil process. So it's not just not just four of hers, but there's a bunch of books in there. We could pick through there, find some stuff that we want to talk about, and like again, people could read a different one. We can come in and have good conversations about that. I think that'd be fantastic as a week's discussion or whatever.
Liam, I got a question to that. So you said earlier they wouldn't know. They've never known what Israel's response would be. It's unpredictable. But based on what's happened over the last 7 months in terms of dropping the veil on Israeli policy and procedure, how much more has that been amplified in the last 7 months than in past times, would you say? Just from your perspective?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, because it actually is quite easy to predict how the Israelis will respond. It's very difficult for the Palestinian militant factions to do it. It's the same thing that Fatah and the Popular Front always struggled with. It's the same thing that Arafat was consistently wrong, over and over again wrong. And tons of analysts from the outside, tons of historians and Mideast experts and Palestinians in the diaspora were always telling them, you're doing this wrong, you're
Right.
screwing up. And he kept doing it because there's a kind of you're inside a particular system. You're in a particular ideological bubble where what you're doing actually makes sense. There is a logic to it, but you're missing these other parts that would help you to understand that you're doing the wrong thing. And because at the end of the day, you're dealing with two complex nationalist movements, that creates walls in your own mind to make it difficult to understand the others. The Israelis, for their part, also really struggle to understand what the Palestinians will do. Neither of them are very good at predicting each other, but from the outside, we can look down on both of them and see, yeah, exactly what they're doing. You know, if person A does this is going to happen. You know, that's very easy to do, but it's very difficult within a system to do that.
And I guess I may have misunderstood. So great clarification there. So, but the other part of it is, though, I don't think the global community has seen the true identity of this Israeli government up until that point, right?
Yeah, I know that the scale of this. Okay, so over a 30-year period,
Yeah.
the India Delta Foxtrot had unalived, somewhere around 50,000 people, and that includes about 30,000 now. So as that number keeps going up, it becomes a larger and larger share of the last 30 freaking years. The scale of this is the only thing that's really different. The types of things that they're doing are exactly the same stuff we've seen since the 80s. Nothing is tactically different. The scale of it is unprecedented. And that provides real opportunities internationally for us to mobilize and change perspectives.
Thank you, Liam. Hey, guys, one more commercial I'm going to drop. I don't know how long he's going to stay, but click the yellow heart, 126 of you. If you want to come up and ask a question, I don't know how long Liam's going to stay. You're at 50,000 almost, 136 shares. Let's get him to 200, but let's get him to 60,000. Don't forget, our podcast is kicking off May 17th. Those of you that said you want to be a mod, thank you. We'll get you signed up on the Discord. We're looking forward to having so many different topics, Liam's wheelhouse, my space, and many other experts in their specialty. We can't wait to launch. Liam, great seeing you again, man. We'll chat later. Have a great night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Night, Chief. Oh, heart.
Thing, if I may. Okay, Chenoweth's next book is going to be called Bread and Roses, and it's about women on the front lines of revolution. So I want people to keep an eye out for that.
Nice. That is that I enjoy so I'm terrible about this. My women in history class, I talk about a lot of radicals. I mean, there's definitely places where I'm accidentally slipping in some stuff. I mean, but yeah, women have been on the front lines of so many important changes, like so many places where they have that the potential is so misunderstood. I mean, what happened in Egypt in 2011, that was driven largely by women. What happened in the French Revolution, that was driven largely by women. And in the aftermath, dudes always rewrite the story to make themselves the heroes. What the fuck?
Do you know who invented the boycott? Pioneered the boycott? Do you know this?
I don't remember the name, but I've heard the story.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story.
Yeah, there's so many great tactical innovations that the women have brought in over the years. It's just So yeah, that's great. When that, oh yeah, when that kind of stuff, I think one fun thing we can do for the book club that might make it different, because I don't want to book. I mean, JBS's book club is cool. I don't want to do one like that. I want to do one that's more discussion based. And what I think I want to do is have people, we all get together and decide what we're going to do, and people will pick like a few related texts on a particular topic and then read them over that month. And then the meeting for that a month later, people all come in and they share the insights from theirs, and we see how they all fit together. Because no single author ever gets everything right. It gives us a way synthetically to build a greater understanding. And what we can do is, depending on how often that group can meet, there can be multiple projects at a time. So if there are 10 people who are really interested in nonviolent civil protests, and we divide up a few books there, but there's also people who want to talk about, I don't know, Foucault or some other weird shit, like, then they can divide topics up, and then everyone's reading something different, but each week you're coming together, and the people who read are on like a panel and they're talking. So it'll be something I'll do through like StreamYard again. We'll have like multiple faces up there, and we'll have people talking and all sharing their views, and everybody else can kind of like watch in the chats and talk about it. That's kind of my idea for it as a reading room. Is not let's read the book together, but let's all go and read something on this general topic, and then come in and share the insights so we all get better. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but I was going to talk much more about that after we get the thing launched with the show with JBS going, that we're going to start in May here. But one of my projects in early summer was going to be to put that one together as well. Okay, so let's see. Erica took off. No one's up here playing referee. So I don't know where we are right now. I guess I'm supposed to pay more attention if no one's here to tell me what to do.
I don't think Woke has spoken yet.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And does Dharma, do you want to come up, or does anyone want to come up and help out a little bit too? So I can keep track of what's going on. I don't want to be on too much later, but I still got to keep track of what questions there are.
Hey, do you need a moderator?
Always helpful. Yeah, I'm too scatterbrained to easily keep track of the order of things and the questions coming over the chats and everything else.
I can hang out. Did you say JBS is coming up?
Oh no, he was just here.
Okay. Okay.
Hi. So I'm waiting. Humbly waiting for being given the voice. Hi, Liam. How are you and everyone else? The first question I have is the Discord group created already?
Yep.
And it's in your bio. Can I find it in your bio?
No, I can't post the link publicly, because what we need in this coming week is for the mods to get together and write the forum rules that we can then post. And then we know, okay, these are the mods that can watch it during the week right now. Here are the rules. It's already set there. I'm gonna post like the like a kind of like a site map. Like here's where you talk about different things on here, like how to find things. And then the mods need to write the rules. When those two things are in place, I'll make it public and anybody can join. But right now, people are trickling in who want to be involved in either the production for the shows or in running the Discord. That's all. Those are the only people that are in there so far.
Okay. I'd love to be involved. I just don't know enough about Discord. I'm kind of pretty dummy in the technological world. So if there is anything I can help with, I'll sign up somewhere. But I will send you DM. I will send you DM.
They're all a little weird. Discord actually isn't that complicated, I think, but it does look different. But if you get in, I mean, we could meet sometime and like just do like a quick little video chat, and I could show you everything very fast. It's not that hard to get around and find the basics of it. But the main thing in terms of bringing on an early moderator crew is people who, okay, so there's notifications of people posting things, right? And they can come at any time of day because people are in all different time zones. So we want enough people that can get alerts so that if, again, some trolls get in there and start doing fucked up stuff, or people start posting porn or like, things that, are illegal, then somebody stops that right away, because that takes down communities, and people do attack communities. So you need a group of people willing to watch the comments as they come in, and it has to be spread out among enough people because no one's around all the time.
Okay, I can. I am on Discord. I just never was on any kind of moderation side. That's why I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I kind of navigate, messages and groups a little bit,
Good.
more or less,
You got the
but
basics. I can show you the moderation stuff like that. That's easy.
okay, all right. I send you DM here on TikTok. I mean, we
Okay,
have
cool. Yeah.
conversations.
Send me a message, and then we're gonna bring a few people in, and I want to put all those mods together, and like, okay, guys, get together in one of the voice chats here, talk about the rules, make this shit up. As soon as that gets done, like literally, as soon as you guys are done with that, I can post it publicly and it's open. But until that's in place, I can't.
Okay. All right. So here's the question I came up with, and it's interestingly, as I came up with the question, I came up to the panel to ask the question. You were kind of gave me a preface for that, because one thing that is in my stomach, other than of course the biggest thing, is that before October 7 happened, exactly a year before, in September, was a huge movement in Iran. And my question to you is, how do you think will involvement in Iran, or the whole mess, will it help to dissolve the gender apartheid in Iran, or change it, or will it strengthen the regime, or maybe the Iran? My ideas, or my hope is that if Iran becomes more accepted as in a process, just like Palestine would get more freedom, and Iran would be more accepted and humanized in the Western world, then the apartheid would also not have a place in it. That's my hope. But what is your take on it?
Okay, this is. I had so many things all pop up at once. Okay, so the one thing to keep in mind about this, there are a lot of factions inside Iran that want change, that have been working hard for it, and the regime is fragile and it knows it. So there are places where the hardliners want certain types of conflict because those conflicts strengthen them and make it harder for the reformists to get things done. And outsiders do too. This is one of the reasons, okay, it infuriates me that a lot of politicians in the US exploit the situation in Iran and talk about it, but what their policies and the way that they do it actually strengthen the regime and hurt women there. They hurt tons of populations there because what they want that as a bugbear. They want it as a bad guy. They want people to see, look, Iran bad. But Iran's growth as a regional power, if it were to become more significantly integrated, if it were to become more of a major player, then the existing system would crumble, because they wouldn't be able to sustain it, and they know that. It's an internal risk there. But the hardliners is one of the reasons the hardliners are honestly kind of happy whenever the US attacks them in some way, because it strengthens their position and leaves them less integrated in the area. It's a really weird kind of dynamic for people to kind of understand there, but the more isolated Iran is, because of all the gender apartheid shit, the harder it is to end those systems. It's much easier for that government to use vicious force to send troops into the streets and unalive crowds when they are already an international pariah and being attacked and under sanctions. They can get away with that. But if they were much more integrated globally, economically, socially, you couldn't get away with that kind of stuff. Right now, their isolation, it plays to the hands of the hardliners. So a lot of things about the current conflict, again, all the players involved, the Iranians, the US, everybody, they all have different agendas. And all of those agendas do affect a ton of pieces further down the board, like the one you're raising here. All the internal social revolutions that Iran's been doing. I mean, I've got whole books on like the long-term social revolutions in Iran, all the intellectual revolutions, all the discussions inside about reform and how they want to do things, all the kind of like the street politics stuff, the ordinary people movements that are changing things on the ground. There's a ton of that happening, but as long as you have a hardline regime in power, it's really hard to tip it over the edge and truly change the system. So some level of conflict is in the government's interest in that way, if that makes sense.
Well, you're kind of, you're totally speaking my mind right now. That's how I was thinking. And my perception, my analysis, my vantage point about when I analyze the countries and the dynamic, I perceive country almost like a person. And I come from like a huge psychological background, right? So I look at the dynamic like a person. And you haven't seen the news today, and I was actually admiring how smart Iran is moving, because today when they attack back, they actually were referring to UN law, and they say we acted within the law, we just throw back and we done. And to me, this is the PR is absolutely smart. And I'm thinking, you cannot in one person, you can, but it's really, you can and you cannot have so much smartness and so much stupidness in one person, if you know what I mean. You can act with.
Honestly, humans are really good at that. I mean, we are. Yeah, that again, humans are capable of great steps forward. We're capable of reason, but we are driven much more by instinct and habit and emotion. We're a lot more easily manipulated than we think. We are a profoundly stupid species that is capable of greatness. So there's always this kind of like internal schizophrenia in us, that can go in different directions.
Yes and no. I guess what I meant is that if someone acts within a law, and Iran is trying to kind of came out of isolation and act on the law, then that's what I'm saying. They will not be able to, continue what they're doing. That's in my hope. What I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hope. Unless they really
to do what they're doing. You mean going back to the gender issue or the current?
Yeah. Like they're not gonna be able to continue.
That's the thing. They can. They can't if they are more socially integrated in the world.
Right.
Talking about being a greater player in terms of the politics, using the international power structures, UN, international law, all that kind of stuff. Those levels of integration don't have the same subsidiary effects in terms of on the ground social change. But if there's far greater traffic, like more people are visiting Iran for business and as tourists, and there's tons of things flowing around, there's tons of like trade and exchange of ideas. If they're more integrated on a social level, they can't maintain that. But in some areas of integration, they can. So tons of the technological improvements they've been able to do regardless of how repressive they are. Tons of the political changes, in interaction in the world, they've been able to do regardless of how repressive they are. But the more integrated they are with the flows of people, that's what breaks it down.
Yeah. Unfortunately, them and the Saudi Arabia, they very difficult to. They are huge examples for Islamophobia, for this huge case.
Yeah,
in West.
they're a lightning rod for that kind of criticism, and this is one of the reasons that our government props them both up in different ways. We directly arm the Saudis and train their secret police and help them to be terrible, because it also helps it not only helps them, that terrible government, to hold on to power, but it actually helps our war on terror discourses and tons of other fucked up shit. It plays into a lot of like the things that our government wants to manipulate. Iran, we don't have the ally relationship, but we manipulate them in different ways. We push them hard in order to have the hardliners lash out, because then we can say, aha, Muslim bad, Iran bad, and then we can use that. They are the two biggest places for that. So It's good to point that out, that the two of them together really do. It's for in different ways. They both serve a very particular purpose in Washington that we don't pay much attention to.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the whole situation, if I can just say a few words, I'm Polish by background. I'm in US right now. But I have a big house and a land in Poland, and I always keep thinking that I want to do something good with it. And I'm in the process of reaching out to the Palestinian embassy in Poland, because I have a vision that to do some kind of dialogue, because the whole problem is that the governments keep us apart, right? That as a curious fact, I will tell you in Poland how the whole dynamic of the country of US basically keeping us all apart, and the whole the narrative that they feed us with. The whole interview with Putin was saying a lot of stupid things about history and the Russian thing that Poles, of course, we pick up on, and we have the whole traumatic history with them. So Poland totally discounted the whole interview, and they totally discounted that the war was, NATO expansion or something, because they picked on him BSing on this aspect, right? Now in US, because we don't let Putin speak, now all of a sudden they love Putin. I see so many people who say Putin is such a great guy, and Putin is, we thought he was demonized, but he's actually such a, he's a good guy. He loves his people, and he, my brain spins, because now I'm like, this whole dynamic, this to me is a bipolar sickness. And I experienced that in Poland when I was running away from, when the regime was falling. The next regime used this bipolar divide et impera, that the narrative they sold us, like, if you're not Catholic, you are communist, right? And I grew up in a very simple house. My parents were not involved in politics. Then they dropped the religions because they didn't have to follow it. I was not communist. I was not Catholic, and I could not believe it how many people were buying into it. So I ran to the Free America, and I'm like, if you're not Democrat, you're Republican. And it's just so horrible. And now it's like, if just because Putin said one sentence truth, which is true, it doesn't mean that he's a good guy, right? Or if America's bad, doesn't mean that he's good.
I mean, stop the clock is right twice a day,
Right.
Yeah, every now and then Tucker Carlson says something good, but 99% of the time he's a neo-Yahtzee. Trump actually ended the TPP. I was happy with that. He did one good thing, but doesn't make all the rest of it as good. It's like,
Yes, but you have people who are like, to me, it's like they will not say anything good about Trump, because that means they kind of lose the identity of hating Trump. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Exactly. You can't tell Democrats that Trump did a good thing because because of the political tribalism. It's one of the ways that, again, the nation state model manipulates us psychologically. It plays on some of the worst aspects of our tribal wiring. It uses them badly, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's a very recent development, but it trends always to more and more destructive forms. So we need to find a way out of that stuff. But yeah, it's interesting. You went from Poland to the US too, because a lot of Western Europe evolved in slightly different ways. They're polarized in different ways. They're much more fractious, though. There's a lot more. You don't immediately go from one or the other. But yeah, in Poland and the US, it's very binary. There's like only one right way to do it and one wrong way to do it, and it's so sad in so many areas. I mean, like the Islamophobia in Poland, like is galling, because there's literally, and there are indigenous Polish Muslims that have been there for 1,000 years. It's a tiny part of the population, but they've been there consistently, and they don't matter. This is one of the problems with like nationalism. If you say Poland is Catholic, then these people aren't Poles. And if you say that they're not Poles, then if they're in the right circumstances, terrible things can happen to them. That's the danger of these nationalist models.
my vision is to heal Poland, because we have like anti-Semitism taken from Russia, like we infected from them, Islamophobia from West Europe, and then homophobia from Vatican. So we infected with all the diseases, right? Seriously.
Yeah, and have been for quite a while too. I mean, it's not like this. This is again where we have certain opportunities when things go wrong to examine these cultural structures and change them, and we don't. I mean, the all of the like the anti-Semitism and stuff was there during the 1930s and 40s. You know, there was an opportunity to get rid of it, but we didn't. All those infections took root as these things were developing in the 19th century, and Poland's just stuck. You know, and yeah, because it's surrounded by more powerful states, it's easier to kind of like, you can always point the finger, Russia this, Germany that, and not really pay attention to what you're doing.
Um, I think we're touching on so many things because I'm also neurodivergent, and I don't want to simplify that, but I think when I observe Poland and Polish people, the anti-Semitism is rooted in Catholic
Yes.
disregard for money.
Well,
And
not necessarily just the money. There's a lot of stuff in Catholicism that for a long time really pushed the Judeophobia.
that's what I'm saying. It's not, I don't want to simplify, but it's
Yeah.
a main reason. When you
Yeah.
talk to Polish people now,
Catholicism.
we have a huge money problem because we've been guilt tripped for money. But Polish people, when I talk about tennis player, Iga Świątek, we have a big tennis player. My friends, most of them who talk tennis, the first thing they say, you know how much money she made? She just won. You know how much money she just got a car. You know how much money that costs? Like, we look at Polish people have a huge, and this is partially, I think, affected because of the Germany and Russia, and we've been impoverished. So the money is the survival thing, and then we kind of jealous of Jewish people that they had money in our, like they could freely be the bankers, right, and Catholics could not, like we did not have the social movement
Yeah. Okay, so yes, on the idea, there's one place I'll add a quibble there for you, because the issue of Jewish bankers wasn't really a factor in the Polish Jewish community. The Polish Jewish community was like 99.5% dirt poor. They didn't have the rich populations. You had a handful of them scattered around in a few of the major financial capitals of Europe that did very, very well. But the Jewish population that did all right in Poland was tiny. But the prejudices were there because it's a general Catholic sensibility, and the Catholic anti-Judaism included this understanding of usury. So it's part of like a set of beliefs that were passed along through that to people to think that way. So even though most Polish Jews didn't benefit from that, you still have heard of the Jewish banker, and it plays into those popular prejudices.
You know what? I don't think in Poland it mattered that Jewish were rich or poor. I don't think that is the factor. The factor to me, when I observe it and read it, and I remember the movies and the literature from 18 and 1900, is that the jealousy of Polish people, which is irony, but that Catholic faith makes you feel guilty touching money, and the jealousy that Jewish people don't have that guilt.
Guilt and Catholicism are like wedded. Yes.
Oh,
Guilt
yes.
is such a major transformation in European history too, because before the rise of Orthodox and Catholic faiths in Europe, shame was the main social motivator for change, and shame fades away and is replaced by guilt. So policing yourself, it's a huge transformation. And Catholicism, it's in its bones. It's like deep.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So is this feeling guilty, but because you feel guilty and you feel jealous, then you have to make yourself better. So they are dirty and we closer to God, right? So that's the anti-Semitism comes in.
Exactly.
Creating that projection, basically psychological projection. So
Yep.
yeah, to me,
Exactly.
it's to address the guilt that Catholicism is instilling in
Right.
you. So
Exactly. It really didn't matter that the Jews around them didn't benefit from it. Judaism as a culture didn't have those features, so you could lash out at people. I totally get where you. Yeah.
I also don't want to discount the Jewish guilt as well, because I have Jews on one side of my family and Catholics on the other, and we're just, it's what we do best, I think.
Yeah, they do it in different areas, but yes,
Right.
yeah, exactly. Guilt works there too. I mean, there's I mean, every story about the Jewish mothers and whatnot, and their use of that too. I think a lot of Catholics would relate to that.
Yes.
But there still are some cultural differences that allow people not to see that in the same way, because on the surface it looks different. So it's hard. If people really knew each other better, they could relate better. That's honestly the saddest part about so much of the Judeophobia that developed in Europe. It's largely because of ignorance. People never really talked and got to know each other. So the fear-based narratives, people could say, "Oh yes, they eat babies," and like you can believe it because you don't really talk to them.
So the question came up that, and I haven't been here very long, but if you were winding down, I don't know how long you've been on.
I can too easily get sucked into this and stuff and just keep going because I enjoy the things that come up. I only really came on to try and like reassure people that the world was not going to end. That this is bad, but it's not going to be this huge. It's very unlikely to be this huge thing that people were imagining, because I kept seeing things showing up in my social media. Everyone's like, World War III. Like, I should hop on.
So next up is Stroopwafel, but right before, I just wanted to bring up a question, and I hate to ask this because I know you made a video earlier today about this. Someone in the chat asked, what is your agenda? And I think people who have been in your chats and who know you know that it's to share the knowledge that you have. But if you want to answer that question.
I saw that go by, and it's okay. I saw a couple of the answers. I don't think I probably didn't see the whole conversation, but I saw somebody saying that I care about humans as a whole, and I want justice and peace for everybody. That's all true. I guess I've never really thought about that in terms of an agenda. Because you've asked me what my agenda is. I don't know. It doesn't occur to me.
Haven't you been getting a lot lately of like, are you pro Iran? Are you pro,
Yeah, I just put one about that because as soon as I point out that they're responding in a way that the laws allow them to do, and blah blah blah, everyone's like, "Oh, why do you love the Iranian government?" I don't. I'm a long-term critic. What are you talking about? I don't like any party. I don't like any government. I'm not connected to any religious movements. I don't have a team that I cheer on. My team is humanity. I like the old what's the Eugene Debs line? I have no country to fight for. I'm a citizen of the world. I don't think of myself as part of a team with an agenda. My character, my interests are in stimulating conversation, stimulating thought, helping people to change themselves by finding things that interest them and can inspire them. I like inspiring people to go off and do whatever crazy things that they want to do. I like having good, stimulating conversations because I'm an autistic weirdo and I like talking about weird shit. But my philosophical perspectives do mean I care a lot about justice and human dignity, and not applying it only in one case or the other. Iranians and Israelis and Palestinians, everybody deserves peace and security and just to be happy and not fearful all the time. But the way to do that is to change the way that we think, to break a lot of this kind of like partisanship. It's honestly toss the freaking agendas and we could all just be freaking humans and see the humanity in each other, and a lot of the problems would disappear. like, so when somebody says, what is your agenda? I'm like, my agenda is to destroy agendas. Yeah. That's it. My agenda is to, it's like, stop doing this shit. That's,
And if you talk about, if you are criticizing or talking about the reality of what's happening right now, or saying anything contrary to like what we're being told by the US government, that does not mean that you are pro Iran. It doesn't mean that you are,
right. You get that all the time. Like,
very black and white
if
thinking.
I point out the consequences of NATO expansion, suddenly it's like, oh, you have the Kremlin's narrative. I'm like, no, Putin is fucking lying. Like, the narrative is wrong, but there are ways in which these things still push them in that direction. A lot of U.S. policy actually helped to inspire the neo-fascist movement that put Putin in power in the first place. So I'm not accepting Putin's agenda. I'm trying to say this is how we got Putin and why this is bad. But people immediately go to the black and white. Like, if you point to a problem that they're also saying, then suddenly you're like in their team, on their court. Like, no, I fucking hate this dude. What are you talking about? I don't like any American president. I don't like any foreign dictator. I don't like any government. I'm not on anyone's team. My team is like, why can't humans just solve their fucking problems and get along?
And the two-party system really supports this black and white thinking. And if you look at any sort of dysfunction in a human being or family system, black and white thinking is a huge thing that comes up when you are trying to protect yourself from situations where you have no power, where you're, so that's where we're at over here.
The funny thing about that too, and I love the specifically thinking in terms of black and white, right? I see everything in shades of gray. I don't think the black and white exist in any real sense. It's all like subtle gradations, and it's a matter of seeing the subtleties. That's what drives me in. I mean, it's weird when people try to put me into a little box, because at the end of the day, I'm a Pyrrhonist. I don't think that there's like nothing is like stable. I'm always like, okay, so if I'm wrong about something, show me the evidence and I'll change my position. And it's as easy as that. I'm not going to like fight it or no, it's all about, is there evidence? Is there reason? Does it make sense? What's the right direction to go? And that's at the end, it's, my epistemology kind of suggests that, it appears to me now to be the case that this is true. But it's always contingent, always contingent. There's nothing at which I balk about changing, If something is shown to be wrong, then you change it. It's as easy as that. So with that kind of epistemology, you can't fall into like having an agenda to want something, because my own views are going to constantly evolve. They're always, it's a constant becoming. There's no set, I'm not always going to think exactly this way.
Well, I think that you have a superpower that people who tend to be drawn to this live in particular and towards just truth and being able to see things, in the gray zone. Also, Gothrak outed you as your agenda. Your agenda is actually bowling. So sorry. The truth is out.
My mother would love that. If only that were true, she would love that.
And we've got
my mother was a bowler back in the day. That's why I got it. I was a league bowler in when I was in school. She got us into bowling. So I wonder what I honestly, she's been getting rid of. She's finally started. She has so much shit. I mean, I cannot believe how much shit my mother's accumulated. I mean, she's a fucking pack rat. But we never found. I wonder what happened to all the bowling trophies I had, because there was a bunch of them from my teens. I've never seen them. I haven't seen them in, I don't know, 30 years, something like that. But by about my mid-20s, it was getting harder and harder to do it. You don't have friends that you go out and hang out with all the time. It just became a very infrequent thing. I'm trying to get back into it now, specifically as a way to fool myself into doing some more type of physical activity to help my legs, because my knees are getting bad. And I don't. I inherited the same problem, and she's had knee replacements, and I don't want them. I
I
want them.
have a bad knee, and I've got I have to basically do yoga or some activity 4 times a week and physical therapy just to be okay.
Yeah,
But
I'm trying to. I'm trying to like. I was trying to use. There's a place in the village here that does yoga classes, and every time they change their schedules and put them on, I go and look, and it never fits my class schedule for that semester. And I've tried looking at like videos and stuff. I have a hard time translating a picture of what someone's doing into physical actions.
yes.
But I want to take up something like that, and then some kind of. I already walk a lot, so if I get the walking and hiking, if I pick up some yoga and I do the bowling, I can build up the muscles all around it
Yes.
to make up for the lack of cartilage.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah. So check this out. I'm going to do this and I'm going to make it a little easy to remember. We got Stroop, James, Emily. Stroop, James, Emily.
I will forget that within seconds.
Everybody remember. If you are Stroop, James, and
I'll try
Emily.
to help.
So I will just say thank you very much, Liam. For the next time, I'll just gonna watch from the background, just so you can drop me, guys. It's better for the live if you drop me.
Actually, stay up here until the end. If you don't have, if you're not in a big hurry, because if people drop off, then by habit I'm going to let more people up, and I'll just be up here all night. It's just
Okay.
a habit, you know.
All right, no problem.
So let's wind down with who's here, and then I can go and because I only slept like 2 hours last night anyway. I mean, I should probably relax and go to sleep at some point.
Okay.
Okay. So Woke's initial question about Iran and like the situation with women and men there got me thinking about. I have had this kind of bizarre fascination the past year or so with the Emirates and kind of the increased tourism. At least I've seen increased tourism to the Emirates, and they've kind of opened up more than they used to. A lot of people going there to like bizarre. They actually now have kosher hotels in the Emirates, which is fascinating to me. But that said, now that people are kind of normalizing different relations with the Emirates, do you see that leading to a similar to kind of what you're saying about Iran, that if you normalize those kinds of relations, that they will become a little bit more the middle, or are they so wealthy and so kind of maybe what's the word, entrenched, that that's not really so possible?
Who's the we in that last sentence?
Sorry,
they
Oh,
the,
sorry. I was
who has the
saying,
wealthy? Who's the subject part?
Sorry, I was talking about the Emirates and kind of how the
All the
men and
Emirates.
women
not
divide.
back to Iran. So when you were saying wealthy at the end, it was still thinking about the Emirates.
Oh, I apologize.
But I thought it seemed like you might have shifted from Emirates back to Iran, and I wasn't sure.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Like, I feel like when I like speak on the phone or when I speak on these things, like my brain just completely goes out the window and my sentence structure makes no sense. So I apologize. And
I'm very specific about sentence structures.
No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you
I'll always ask
correcting me.
clarifying questions.
Sure. What was I saying? Do you? My question was about kind of. It wasn't so much about Iran as much as the Iranian question made me think about the situation I've been observing in the Emirates.
Right.
And could that be a model for Iran going forward? Those kinds of, because you guys were talking about, we have more people having tourism and economic relations with Iran. Could that shift their politics more towards being a bit more equitable?
Sort of, yeah. Actually, Iran could do it much better. There are definitely features of both structures, both systems. I mean, like that, the increased trade and traffic and people passing through that. Yeah, it is socially liberalizing the Emirates slowly, but there are a lot of political breaks on that, and a far greater degree of in some ways homogeneity, as well as like an old boys club among like the actual emirs that hold it all together and impose certain things. And a lot of the countries in the GCC have been trying to get around their own conservative bases. It's honestly kind of, it's honestly kind of like weirdly wicked in a way. Like a lot of countries that struggle to really reform effectively are sending huge numbers of their students abroad to study for years, knowing that they will come back transformed. And once they're there, they're going to be back into all the old conservative pressures and stuck there, so they'll compromise and some of that will fade away, but they will have a ton of things about them that are different. So there's a generational transformation underway. They're using some of their wealth to introduce a lot more social dynamism into an area that wouldn't have as much of it. So their wealth is very specific to the way that they're doing it. You know, a lot of it is trying to attract certain businesses, becoming like air traffic hubs and all that kind of crap, like, you know, things that are going to bring money through, building a new financial hubs. There's tons of things where it's a lot of money, so it's bringing a particular class of like tourists. Why would they have kosher stuff there? It's because of European and American like Jewish businessmen that they want to come there. You know, like they're trying to attract like tons of foreign money that pass through. But the main way that you're actually going to change the society more rapidly, like at a cultural level, is what's happening when you're sending so much of the youth abroad to study. They're bringing good ideas back. Iran's case is a bit different because there's so many different. Oh gosh, this could take too long to get into. But the Iranians would have an easier time with it if the restrictions weren't on them that were there. If they were friendlier with their immediate neighbors and the rest of the world wasn't trying to isolate them, the Iranians themselves would bolt out and interact and go all over the place, and because they love the exchange of ideas already. Iran has always been a cultural crossroads where the Gulf states have not. The Gulf states have specific aspects where they've been connected. So a number of them were connected to South Asia and the trade with that. So like the Dow heading out there and bringing stuff along with the little boats. But beyond that, those states don't have a lot of history of interacting with the wider world in the way that Iran has for millennia. There's a lot of things in their cultural DNA that come from being a crossroads. The Silk Roads passed through Iran. They literally went through Iran. Like, so tons of ideas passed through it, right? Iranians played a significant part in the spread of Buddhism. You know, there's so much about their longer term history that more predisposes them to wanting to interact with the wider world. So if the barriers from the outside were down, they would be able to embrace it so much more rapidly than most of the population of the Emirates could. One of the reasons that Kuwait and Qatar and the Emirates are sending so many people abroad is that's their backdoor way of doing that. They're trying to introduce new ideas without scaring their own conservative elites who have no exposure to a lot of the rest of the world.
That's funny. You know, I went to when I was in university. I had tons of kids who were from those. I had tons of friends who were from Qatar and Saudi and just all the.
A lot of my students over the last 15 years or 20 years have been. Yeah,
I never thought about it.
Yeah,
I never thought about it.
Universities all across the U.S. are taking in tons and tons of them because the states are putting up so much cash to send them abroad. And that's actually, they're not going to tell their own people the reason, but we know why they're doing it. It's actually quite clever, but it's like a backdoor way of trying to change things.
I mean, that's fascinating. It's actually very cool also.
It's kind of cool. But it's going to be a much slower process for them because they only have these two main avenues for it, where Iran, because of its longer term history, has a very deep cultural connection to that and a kind of inborn appreciation for that diversity. Oh, Pauline asked about. Okay, so look up like the Sogdians if you want some. If you're looking at, because there was tons of different Iranian cultures and languages. The modern states have tended to like down. Like a lot of the other languages have slowly been fading away. You know, Sogdian, Khwarezmian, Median. Like there was tons of different Iranian peoples. The Sogdians, in particular, on the eastern edge of the Iranian world, were all Buddhist for a while. Well, significant numbers of them were Buddhist, and they were also Silk Road traders. So a lot of the Buddhism that got to China and Japan started with Iranians, Sogdians in Central Asia carrying that outward. I mean, there's tons of stuff. It's actually how Christianity got to China too. Nestorian Christianity was in China, but Iranians did that too. I mean, there's connections like this going back thousands of years for them. So even with the isolation that's built up over the more recent term, look, a little garland. Because of tons of the political problems in the 19th century and then all the isolation in large parts of the 20th, even with all of that, there are so many basic cultural perspectives that are wildly different for the Iranians. It's unfortunate that they're stuck with the kind of governments that they've had across the 20th century, because it just stymies a population that would otherwise be a really a fantastic major player in the world. They've just been fucked by history. And if anybody wants, like, we can do a deep dive in that. I mean, because I do a lot on like the last 300 years of Iranian history, and I get to integrate that in some of my classes. But I actually had a course on the Persianate world, but it got to run once, like 1 year, and the next 2 times we tried to put it on the schedule, not enough students signed up for it, and I can't afford to have a class canceled, so I just never got to run it again. It was very disappointing. But there's so much that that's fascinating about it that I try to integrate it into other classes. Anyway, so I'm gonna nerd out there. I'm gonna stop.
It's really cool, and I really have tried to develop a better appreciation of Iranian history recently, because they had such an influence on so many aspects of history and trade internationally, and it's just the wealth of knowledge and richness of all the culture and cultures going on that is just fascinating. But it is hard to dive into that without having that much background. So actually, I think that class would be awesome.
Yeah, we should do that one just as a theme for 1 week, whenever. But yeah, honestly, it's impossible for me to imagine Christianity and Islam like at all without the longer term Iranian history, without the Zoroastrian cultural foundations for that, because and it massively affected the direction, the trajectory of Judaism. But a lot of parts there were already in place. And it's one of the reasons Judaism is so different from Christianity and Islam, because some features are much older. But it was already trending in a certain direction, and then the Iranians heavily influenced it. But I don't think that Christianity or Islam could even exist as religions if the Iranians had never migrated into the area. It wouldn't make sense. Like there are so many unique intellectual contributions they brought into the Near East region that weren't there before.
Someone in the chat asked, didn't America prop up their current regime? And I think that there are some different misconceptions about the U.S.'s involvement in their in Iranians politics, and also I think I recently read that they put someone in place, and then there was a revolt against whoever was the U.S. wanted to be in control.
There's a lot of parts like that, actually. I mean, if you go back into like the 30s, 40s, we were the good guy to them. We weren't the big bad imperial power. We actually had, during the 1940s, missions on the ground helping them to reform their currency and restructure the economy in ways. But the Brits and Russians were always competing to try and control the area, and they manipulated it heavily from the beginning of the 20th century, especially. But some of it goes back into the late 19th as well. But there's in terms of like physical interventions, like actually boots on the ground, beginning of the 20th century. Both Russians and Brits are there, and they had a heavy involvement in pushing it in certain directions there. Now, the upshot of that is that the way the U.S. gets involved heavily in a bad way is because the Brits were forced out. They were already getting weaker because of World War II and all the costs there. I mean, they were shrinking as an economic power, and it got to where they could more easily deal with British attempts to subvert things. So they didn't have the ability to impose their will on it. So when okay, so this is harder. I got to take it back a second. So go back to like 1903 briefly. There's an oil concession signed that gives control of all oil that can be found in the country to a British investor in exchange for 16% of the profit that would go directly to the Qajar Shah. So 16% of profit, not gross, and it's only 16, and it only goes to the Shah, not to the country or anything else. That deal stayed in place, and they couldn't change it. They kept fighting, please change it, please change it, please change it. Fighting all through the 30s, 40s, couldn't get them to do it. Finally, the Iranian government in 1950 or 51, I think, lost patience and nationalized the oil. And took it away from the AIOC, the ancestor to BP. And then that opens a process of like, we got to negotiate. Okay, we've seized your assets, but we have to compensate you for them. And while they were trying to, talk there, they weren't talking in good faith. They were trying to find a way to overthrow the government, but they couldn't because the Iranians actually threw out the British agents. So Britain asked the U.S. to overthrow the government, and we did. At the time, the Shah was ruling as a constitutional monarch who took a step back. The first Pahlavi Shah was a tyrant, but he was overthrown during World War II because he was a Yahtzee sympathizer. When his son took power, his son took a back seat and let an elected government and prime minister run things. The U.S. turned to him and said, bro, would you like to be an absolute dictator? If you're cool with that, we will overthrow this government and put you in power. And he's like, yeah, I'll do that. My father got to do that. I didn't get to. Cool. So we put Mohammad Reza Shah in power in 1953. He was already there, but he was a constitutional monarch. We made him an absolute dictator, and we propped him up for 25 years. The Savak secret police in Iran that was torturing and unaliving people and all that kind of crap, the CIA trained them. Right, we gave them tons of weapons. They were flying like state of the art equipment in the 1970s, like the F-14 Tomcats and stuff. Like they were a very close Cold War ally from 1953 to 1978. But in 78, a popular revolution involving millions of people and tons of coalitions toppled our pet dictator, and the U.S. government has never forgiven them for that. But we only got there because we inherited Britain's imperial hegemonic role in the area when they couldn't do it anymore. We stepped in and we did that. So that's one of the many disasters of post-World War II foreign policy. Truman was a disaster, and Eisenhower also was. Eisenhower wasn't as bad as later Republicans, but Truman and Eisenhower are both massive disasters for U.S. foreign policy in the long run. And this is one of those. There's so much blowback from governments that we overthrew in the 50s and 60s. And Iran is one of them. 1953, we toppled a democratically elected government, put in power an absolute monarch, and kept him in power for 25 years with tons of weapons and torture. The same thing we're doing in the Gulf Arab states today. The reason we sell them so many weapons is so that they can oppress their own population. It's quite deliberate. But we got to do that with Iran before, and we don't get to anymore. So there's a lot of bad blood over that. So that's I think the shortest. Like it's like 100 years in like a few minutes, but that's the short version of like how we got involved in terms of like fucking with their governments and why we are the great Satan to them. So
that was a great intro. Thank you.
Anyway, so yeah, people want to do like if people want to do like deep dives in any given week on some area that I don't know I'm into, like we can always do that. I mean, people never bring up Iran. It's interesting. So yeah, somebody save that as an idea and bring that up for a week. We can totally do that. It'd be a lot of fun. And you know what? I'll tell you, across the next couple of years, I'm really going to be missing it. I've decided, since I'm losing one of the campuses, to try and tighten my belt, be poorer for a while, and have more time to work on finishing a book. So I'll be like really financially nervous because if I lose a class, I'm kind of fucked. Because right now I have a cushion and I won't have one anymore with only the 2 campuses. But that's the campus that I do most of my Middle East classes at. That's the campus that I created their entire Middle East history program. All of my upper division Middle East history classes are now gone. So I'm going to miss being able to talk about some of these issues. I mean, my class on the Arab revolutions, gone. I mean, that's been hella fun. You know, my course in Israel Palestine, gone. You know, the Persianate world, all this stuff, just toast. Well, because that university has decided to drop all of their part-timers and try to realign to all full-time faculty, which is really unusual in the U.S. today. I don't know how they're going to pull it off, but it fucks a lot of the people that had to fall into that situation. I mean, the profession was undermined decades ago. I mean, 75% of classes in the United States are not taught by tenured faculty. They're taught by part-timers. They systematically undermined this profession over the last 60 years, but now if you try to realign it, it fucks whole generations of people who have been stuck in that system and have found a way to live with it. It's not great. I would have loved to have a single full-time position, but this is the system that I got into because it was what was there, right? And now if you push away from it, it's going to cause a massive disruption. I feel more bad for the students in many ways because there's a lot of people on that campus that really appreciate all of these courses, and they will have zero for years now.
I bet they do really appreciate learning about this, the courses you teach, the subjects.
Well, yeah, because they're relatively a lot of universities don't cover these things. So, I mean, when I started there, they had no courses in the Middle East at all. You know, so I mean, I literally created every one of them for them. So yeah, it's kind of unfortunate there. But I'm just on a personal level, over the next couple of years, I'm really going to miss that. In one more month, I'm done from that, and because instead of trying to jump into it, adding another university back into my schedule, I want to try and finish my my Palestine history. So I'm going to try and just tighten the belt and not do that. But it means I'm going to be teaching fewer classes, and the main classes that I miss, the ones that because I teach most of my other subjects elsewhere. The things I miss is my upper division Middle East classes and my history of sexuality. That group, that one thing, those were only at that campus. So I'm going to lose those. I won't be able to get to talk about that at all.
Do you get some of the same enjoyment by talking about those topics on these forums, or is it just pretty different?
No, anytime somebody is interested in learning and wants to talk about something, no, it's great. I do get some of the same basic thrill out of it, which is fun because I like I don't know, challenging people, stimulating people, getting them thinking about something new, like, you know, dropping little seeds and then they can take them off and do whatever they're going to do with them. I like trying to inspire in that way. It's the thing that I get out of being in the classroom. And this is very similar to that. In some ways, it's definitely different. Like the physicality is gone. I pace in the classrooms, you know, like I sit on desks. I like move around. But and of course I don't get the assignments. I don't get to read your papers. There's no fun there. You know, there's a lot of things that are different about it. But being in a classroom is actually more stressful because I'm a massive introvert. I'm still getting used to this new one. I got a Garmin now, but an ex got me into Fitbits a long time back so I could track things. And I started looking, and you look at the statistics for the hours that I'm lecturing, my heart rate is massively spiking the entire time. So I feel calm. I'm comfortable. I have no problem with the conversations, but I've adapted to it. But on a physiological level, because I'm an introvert, my body knows that I shouldn't be doing this. So while I feel okay doing it, I'm still pushing myself harder than like my own natural wiring would like. And this doesn't do that.
Yeah.
I'm 98 right now. And when I'm lecturing, I'm usually like 130,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
120, 130, you know, like it's usually, considerably higher than this.
Well, if you want us to write you papers, we would probably love to. The people who come to our lives, I feel like, are those type of people.
I think honestly, if a reading group takes off that involves different people taking on different books and coming and sharing that will actually replicate on some level something a bit more like the graduate seminars that I mean they were just a revelation to me. Because I come from a working class family. I was a longshoreman and truck driver. I was the first person in my family to go to college and didn't start till I was 30. So I had never been in an environment where other people had read shit that I had read. So sitting around the tables in a graduate seminar and we've all read these books and people are sharing different ideas, it was like so stimulating. Like, what? Like, who are these people? Like, oh, all the time. I was just like kid in a candy store all the time. And I miss that still. So, rather than I don't know, assigning you like shitty research papers, I'd rather I don't know, if you guys want to like read different things and share your thoughts and ideas, I'd enjoy the hell out of that because I still really miss that environment.
Oh,
Question, Liam. For your history of sexuality, do you have a list of readings for that class that you were teaching?
Yeah. That's every class has a slightly different structure. I come up with a different way to do it. Some things that I want to do. That one is actually kind of a reading heavy class. Every week they're reading multiple chapters, in books, so I like scan in tons of stuff. I'm bad that way. So the tons and tons of PDFs of like multiple chapters from different books that they were all given out. And each week, in addition to like the lecture topics, there were discussions, and they would like all get circle the wagons and like talk about what they saw in those readings.
Well, but
There's a lot.
My question is very, very concrete. I just want to know if you have somewhere a list of books that you can share.
Yeah, no, I'm saying because of that. Yeah, I mean, it'd be very easy for me to point out, okay, these are some key things that I've been using for years. These are texts to do. I could write things up for you. Yeah.
Okay.
There's two bookcases on that topic in their side of the room here. But there's a number of ones that I've had in rotation. I move around and change the readings every now and then, but there's a chunk of them that are just, I use certain ones over and over again. I could make a nice list,
Okay.
to put there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Let me know. That's something we can bring up. And it's actually one of the things you can, I don't know, throwing around the Discord and a discussion there. People can talk about it. Yeah, no, that's very easy.
Thanks.
are you still doing specific sexuality talks, or was that just something you did a bit ago? Where I think you had one where that was like one of the major topics.
Yeah. Every now and then people try to suggest like a theme for the night, and then we try to keep on it. It's often been very difficult because we all get on tangents, but I can do that anytime, honestly. It doesn't matter. I mean, if you guys have an idea or a theme or something, if somebody was like, hey, let's all just talk about homosexuality this week or whatever, I don't know, just pick a theme. Like I'm fine.
Okay.
One of the things in the Discord, one of the little channels under the because for the overall server, I created several sub-servers on it, so for the different things. One of them is for this, for the office hours, with the Mad Professor, and then one of them is for the one with the with JBS and me, and then there's a spot for his show, and then one for my later Radical Reading Room. But the one for this, there's a section on there for topic suggestions, and people can like dump things in their head. Love it if you did a week talking about this and like share that, and we could like. I don't know, come up with like a schedule. Maybe every now and then we have like themed weeks and people pick different things they most want to talk about. I think that'd be great. But it's one of the things I put in as a section so people could do that easily, could suggest ideas and topics. Because it'd be nice to have themed weeks. It doesn't happen often enough.
I got the reminder to remind you of the time. It's 10:02.
Yeah, it's better like once the people once everyone's hit their questions. It was the last people in there,
Everybody has hit their question. There, I believe.
Then yeah, we end on like, hey, we can pick topics and we can talk about it. That's our closing thought.
We love you. We appreciate you and your time and your wisdom, and get some really, really good sleep. You deserve it.
Yeah, I need to, because I have some writing to do tomorrow, as well as grading. So I'm going to be at my desk for most of tomorrow. So I got to get some rest for that. But yeah, this has been fun, and hopefully for people who came into this, hopefully talking a little bit about some of the stuff, especially in the first few hours when we were talking a lot more about the current conflict. Hopefully it helped a little bit, because I want people to be aware of all the risks, but I don't want people to panic. I mean, the tendency to catastrophize is really harmful to movements for social change. If we want to make the world better, we have to at least be able to take a deep breath collectively and focus. So hopefully this helped a little bit with that. That was my goal.
It always helps. The whole chat is filled with people saying thank you. So,
Oh, thanks.
yeah.
And what do you think, Minerva?
She is so precious and regal.
She's a goddess.
Mm-hmm.
She's a war goddess.
I love that little look. She's almost like showing us her beauty.
Yeah. She's good, sitting there and just, I know I'm awesome. I'm all that in a bag of chips. Look at me. I'm everything.
We see you, girl.
Minerva. Puella bona. Oh, puella bona.
I know for me specifically, Biden, all of them have just put out these long statements that are just so false, and so, and so coming and hearing you talk, and you've done some videos lately about what was happening before it happened, and, so hearing you talk about the history, the knowledge that you have with Iran, with the US, with Israel, that helps me personally just be stronger in my, declarations of, wait, everybody that I know in my community, wait, this is not the truth. This is not, they're lying to you. The US government's lying to you. And this is what really happened. So having you add greater context is very, very helpful.
Well, just as a closing thought on that, there are a bazillion and one problems in Iran, within its own society, right, political structure, everything like that. So it's not to say that those things don't exist, but every U.S. president for the last century that has said anything about Iran was lying to you. I mean, none of them are honest. You can just go back and back and back, and they're all fucked on this issue, because there's something about the strategic location, it's the historical wealth passing through there, the way that it interacts with so many of the competing empires in the area, that it plays into a lot of the 19th and early 20th century politics, as well as the post-World War II oil politics. There's several different international nexuses that Iran just, by bad luck, is right in the middle of. That means that everyone is going to lie about it for their own particular purposes. So yeah, I don't care if it's Biden, Trump, Obama, Carter, Reagan, they've always lied about this stuff. So don't don't take that stuff too seriously, and please try to caution other people as well. Yeah, they're lying to you. Please, they're lying.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. The water's out too.
Right.
That's a good opportunity to shut up, isn't it? Right, Noah? It's time to go. Okay, so this is fun, unexpected. Have a great night, folks. I'm going to shut this down now.
Thanks so much, Liam.
Have a good one, folks.
Yep.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, that's not true.
Bye.
She drinks from my water cup whenever she can, right? So she'll drink a little bit of it, and whatever, I don't care. Her head shoved into it because it's empty. There's only drops at the bottom. She shoved her entire head was in the. Oh, you're a nut. You can't get to that. There's nothing there. Oh, that was great. Like, because she's so fluffy, right? But the face goes into a glass, and all the hair pushes back. And it's just this weird shape, like squished it. Sorry, oh, that made my evening. Okay. Anyway, have a great night, folks. Peace and long life.